Good evening, class. Any doubts from the previous one? And I'll repeat that tax evasion. OECD wala jo. Hey, fighting over seats. दो महीने बाद दोनों को डीसी बनना है एक सीट के पीछे पॉलिटिक्स में नहीं जा रहे ना अभी वो तो बहुत दूर है the difference you understand between the two, forget what is written. You understand ना what is the difference between the two. तो प्लस माइनस कैसे होगा देख लेना टैक्स और सब्सिडीज कैसे एडजस्ट होंगी. Forget what is written, you understand the difference between the two, between the three in fact, factor cost, basic price and market price. And वो remittances in public account are only transfers, they are not foreign remittances. Government departments बीच का जो उनका transactions है, that is a remittance, it is not a foreign remittance. Remittance, the definition of remittance is what? One-sided transfers. Usually we use it in the context when people are sending it from other countries. So these remittances mentioned in public account, these remittances are between the governments. So वो जो दो terms हैं उसमें sanctions and remittances, both are the transfers between the government departments. वो remittances वो बोले नहीं है which the confusion was. Okay, so the OECD tax plan. The OECD tax plan has two pillars. Pillar 1 is talking about introduction of digital service tax and pillar 2 is talking about minimum tax rates. So two things which we are going to tackle here simultaneously what is happening. One is that there are certain players which are doing digital, which are providing certain digital service without having any physical presence. So for example, any company in US is providing certain digital services in India but has no physical presence in India. Since it is having no physical presence in India but is generating certain revenue from Indian sources, this amount is not being taxed by India. We are losing out on certain tax. So for this, OECD says that you can have now a digital service tax. That means you can take certain tax from the activity because they are generating revenue from your sources. Indian people, they are selling certain things here without having any physical presence. So now you can tax these services. What the idea of DST, India had already introduced in the form of equalization levy. In 2016, we introduced it for advertisement services, a tax of 6%, and then we introduced another equalization levy on e-commerce activities. That is, if foreign e-commerce companies are selling anything to India or foreign companies selling advertisement services to India, they will have to pay certain tax in India. This is your concept of digital service tax. Now what the OECD plan says, that if you are going to introduce, if this agreement goes through, if there is a digital service tax that applies, you will not have your own equalization levy. Member countries cannot have their own equalization levy. This is why India under the G24 is trying to fight this, because it is going to lose out on these revenues. This is the concept of digital service tax under the OECD pillar, the pillar 1. Then the second is your pillar 2, which is trying to control the problem of base erosion and profit shifting. Certain countries, tax havens, have very low taxes. So the parent company stationed in any country brings in a subsidiary here and tries to show its profits from this subsidiary so that it can evade taxes. It erodes its base, that is the parent company. It is not showing the profits from here, but it is showing the profits from a tax haven country where the tax jurisdiction is low. No, the maximum FDI in India comes from which country? Mauritius and Singapore are the two countries from where the maximum FDI comes in because of the low tax jurisdiction, and on top of it, India also has double taxation avoidance agreement with them. So parent company is shifting the base here and is shifting the profit here, is eroding the base here, so they are losing out on, this country is losing out on tax. This is why now all countries are going to have a minimum tax rate of 15%. If they are charging low, the remaining of the tax can be charged by this country. These are the two pillars of the OECD plan. One pillar talks about taxing those services where companies were providing services without having physical presence. Under pillar 2, a global minimum tax rate, so that to counter base erosion and profit shifting. This is the two pillar plan of OECD. India is trying to tackle this. India doesn't have a lot of advantage here also because India already has a very high tax rate. There's not much advantage to be achieved from India here, but this is where India is going to lose out, because this DST, whatever the pillar 1 says, it is applicable on a very small number of companies having a very high turnover. So India is not going to get a huge amount of benefits. So this is why India is trying to counter this through the G24. Is this clear? What's the next topic? Virtual digital assets. Taxation of virtual digital. This was introduced last year. What exactly are virtual digital assets? NFT, cryptocurrency, assets based on blockchain. This is what the Act has, Finance Act last year has explained what a virtual digital asset it is. A cryptocurrency, whatever the name is, considered a virtual digital asset, taxable under this if it meets the following criteria. Right now, two things have been classified under virtual digital assets. They are cryptocurrencies and NFTs. These should be the feature of the instruments, then only they'll be classified under virtual digital assets. It should be in the form of information code, numbers or tokens, generated through cryptographic means, digital representation of value. It has some inherent value and allows for storage and transfer of its units or tokens. These are the features of virtual digital assets. There's one exception to this. Any digital asset issued by any government, be it India or foreign country, they will not be included under virtual digital assets. There's an exception to virtual digital assets, that is, the government issued digital currencies, both Indian and foreign, have been excluded from this definition. E-rupee will be excluded from taxation. In fact, the whole concept of e-rupee is completely different. वो एक legal tender है, just like normal currencies. The RBI prints notes, now the RBI will release digital currency. And it also says the government can specify any digital assets as VDA or can exclude any asset from this definition. This is the idea of virtual digital assets. Intrinsic value, it has to have certain intrinsic value. Cryptocurrency, see, intrinsic value इसलिए it is perceived. Cryptocurrency का एक perceived value है. Intrinsic value तो is nothing linked to. It is a perceived value. NFT is giving you ownership over certain asset. So वो आपका ownership comes from that whatever the asset is behind NFT. 1% your own NFT is what? It's a non-fungible token. That means you are a unique identity token on the ownership of the asset. 1% आप उस NFT के owner हो. तो same thing, it is again a perceived value. Intrinsic value ऐसा नहीं है कोई metal bagged है या कुछ और bagged है. It is all a perceived value. It is not a legal tender. In India, NFT or cryptocurrencies, nothing is a legal tender. The government has categorically said, in fact, taxation became very controversial because the government introduced taxation but did not clarify whether they're legal or illegal. तो वो उस कंट्री में, हाँ वो उस कंट्री में एक्सेप्ट होगा, यहाँ पे वो टैक्स होगा. Foreign currency issued, which are both Indian and foreign, where the government has issued the digital currency. एल साल्वाडोर ने क्रिप्टो करेंसी को लीगल टेंडर बनाया है, उन्होंने खुद इशू नहीं किया है. दिस इज गवर्नमेंट इशूड, सेंट्रल बैंक इशूड अगर है इंडियन और फॉरेन, तब वो इट विल बी काउंटेड एज अ वर्चुअल डिजिटल एसेट. Sorry. So virtual digital assets will be taxed in India. Taxation income from transfer will be taxable at a flat rate of 30%, and there will be no offset allowed. So if you have gains in the transfer of these assets, certain cryptocurrency पे आपका gain हुआ है, profit हुआ है, and for certain cryptocurrencies you have certain loss. So your net profit will not be adjusted with the loss. This means that there is no ability to offset any other losses. For example, if there is one cryptocurrency A and cryptocurrency B which you are holding, A may you have gained a profit of 10% and B has a loss of 5%. So your net profit for taxation of virtual digital asset will only be, you cannot offset your losses on the cryptocurrencies under the taxation on virtual digital asset. If you are holding many assets here, only the profit will be counted. You can't offset your losses. ये net profit आपका 5% नहीं होगा, net profit आपका 10% ही होगा, whatever the profit you have earned on this currency. If there's another currency where you have incurred a loss of say 20%, तो net आपका loss जा रहा है, but you will still have to pay a tax because you can't offset any losses. This is the idea of, तो फिर तो there's no profit. Tax is on profit. Some loss, some profit कैसे होगा? Net तो उस पे होगा कुछ. अगर इस पे पहले loss हुआ फिर profit हो net, कैसे हो सकता 100 का loss और 50 का profit at the same time? So the net computation date पे जो आपका net होगा, अगर profit है तो उस पे tax है, अगर loss है, तीनों पे अगर loss है, then you are not going to pay any tax. अगर मैंने एक डेट पे पूछा आपका नेट क्या है इस पे, इसी वाली करेंसी पे, तो अगर वो प्रॉफिट है तो वो टैक्स्ड है. कंप्यूटेशन डेट पे ईयर में आपका नेट प्रॉफिट होगा, पूरे एक साल में आपने मार्च में खरीदा, फिर जैन में जो लिया या दिसंबर में लिया, नेट आपका जो पूरे एक साल में उसका प्रॉफिट या लॉस होगा, तो वो नेट पे ही हम लगाएंगे. बट यू कैन नॉट ऑफसेट द लॉसेज ऑफ एनी अदर करेंसी. सिंगल पे जो है उसी पे आपको यू विल हैव टू पे, एंड दिस इज द टैक्स ऑफ 30%. Is this clear? Taxation on virtual digital asset. Value, if you transfer, tax to be deducted at source at the rate of 1% if a resident virtual digital asset above a monetary threshold. Transfer pay 1% you will have to pay. And a gift of virtual digital assets, hand of the recipient. These are the three parameters which the government has introduced for taxation of virtual digital assets. What are virtual digital assets? Cryptographic and anything which can be inserted by the government and not, and can be excluded also. Principal amount, for example, if you are going to transfer it, 1% आपको TDS कटेगा, और उसके बाद आपका जो नेट एक साल में जो लॉस है, जितने भी आपके एसेट्स का प्रॉफिट और लॉस, उस पर आपको 30% देना है. And if you are going to gift it, the person who has received it will have to be taxed. ये threshold value ही 10,000 गवर्नमेंट ने बोली है. 10,000 से ऊपर अगर आपको कोई रिसीव होता है, that will be taxed at 1%. This is tax deducted at source. So these are the three features for taxation on virtual digital assets. NFT पे already they have asked a question last year. Capital gains tax की तरफ ही है, but capital gains tax में you cannot offset your losses with any other assets. This has to be clarified here. This is like a capital gains because आपका ये एक asset ही है. Something like that. Is this clear? Taxation on virtual digital assets? So the government has not clarified whether these assets are legal or illegal, but has introduced taxation on them. RBI has issued a notification where they have said that there's no underlying value, so people should first understand them, then only at their own risk they should invest in these assets. Otherwise, there's no underlying value. Because a lot of things, there was misinformation about these assets. And non-tax revenues. Asset monetization, one of the asset monetization, disinvestment and privatization. What's the difference between the three? So you understand what non-tax revenue is? Non-tax revenue is the incoming receipts of the government which is not tax. There are two types of incoming receipts for the government. Government can raise money from tax or non-tax. Example? A lot of examples, but major. What is the difference between disinvestment and privatization? Disinvestment and privatization. This is 100% government shareholding. This is 100% private. The moment government shares falls below, this is called as, and this whole 100 to any percentage is called as disinvestment. Privatization is given another name in India which is called as strategic disinvestment. Strategic disinvestment and privatization are the same thing. The whole idea being that ownership and management control is not government now. Ownership and management control is now private. And the moment government sells the whole entity, that is called as strategic sale. For example, Air India, the whole assets and liabilities of the company are completely sold off together. This is strategic sale. What's the relevance of 75 or 76%? Foreign direct investment. So, according to the Companies Act, there are certain decisions which require 75 or more majority. There are certain decisions of the government or certain decisions of the company which can only be taken by more than 75% of the majority. So if the government falls below 76%, that is it's less than 75, government is now 74 and private is 26. This is called as strategic minority sale. Some of the strategic decision making power has been ceded by the government to another players. This is strategic minority sale. Anything between 100 and 76 is called as minority sale. This is disinvestment and privatization. Privatization is a type of disinvestment. Disinvestment is the broader term. Now what is monetization? Is monetization related to disinvestment or privatization? What is monetization then? Ownership is not transferred. So ownership is transferred for a certain duration of time. Monetization is type of a lease contract. What happens in monetization? This is type of a PPP contract where for certain duration of the time the government leases out the asset to a private player. Monetization happens of the brownfield assets where the government transfers the asset to a private partner for generation of the asset is not disinvested or privatized, it is transferred back at the end of the lease. For a certain duration of time, an already created asset is transferred to the private player. They generate certain revenue, and this revenue is shared with the government, and it is transferred back to the government after the end of the lease period. Why has the government introduced monetization? Capital investment. The whole idea was that the government is not able to operationalize these brownfield assets. Government has created a lot of assets, but they're not able to operationalize these brownfield assets. They're not able to generate revenue out of them. This is why the government is now transferring them to this and will get non-tax revenue. This is a source of non-tax revenue for the government. This is different from disinvestment and privatization. What happens in disinvestment or in privatization? Sale of ownership rights. It is not a sale of asset. Just your seat on the board or certain percentage of your shareholders are changed. It is not selling of the assets. Even monetization also doesn't mean selling of the asset. It's just transferring the asset for operationalizing it because the government could not do it. Now the government is monetizing both core assets and the non-core assets. The difference between them is, no. The difference between the core assets, अगर profitable है तो government monetize क्यों करेगी? अगर बना ही लेती revenue तो आगे क्यों देना है? Yes, any asset which is central to the business, that is, it is not going to operate if these assets are sold off or given to someone else. These are called as core assets. And for core assets, the government has a plan which is called as the National Monetization Pipeline. Non-core assets are those assets which are not important for the working of the business. For example, BSNL has certain buildings, certain land which it is not using, which is not central to the operation of its business. There could be certain telecom infrastructure which is important for its business. So core assets ke monetization ke liye the government has non-monetization pipeline, and for non-core assets the government has the body. The name is National Land Monetization Company. It's a 100% government owned company which is going to monetize the non-core asset, primarily the land and buildings which are kept vacant of the central government and its related PSUs. So the NLMC is a specially created body which is going to monetize the non-core assets. पहले ये non-core assets सारे monetization was the responsibility of under the Ministry of Finance. This was the ministry which was responsible for monetization of non-core assets. Now it is being transferred to this wholly created subsidiary of the government, the National Land Monetization Corporation. This is going to monetize the non-core assets. Core assets के लिए the government has the National Monetization Pipeline. So it is going to give up the assets under structured partnerships, specially created PPP agreements. Part of them is also lease agreements and also through structured financing models. That is to the Infrastructure Investment Trust and Real Estate Investment Trust. These are nothing but just like mutual funds. These InvITs or REITs, they create a special purpose vehicle where they are going to pool in funds from a lot of retail investors. ये अपने units sell करेंगे retail investors को. Retail investors are going to give the money, which money is being used for various investment in infrastructure or real estate projects. If it is taking up certain core assets monetization, तो वहाँ पे investment है, या कहीं और any other purpose of infrastructure or real estate can be done. This is the functioning of Infrastructure Investment Trust and Real Estate Investment Trust. These are mutual funds where retail investors get a chance to invest in infrastructure assets. Otherwise, it's difficult to invest from the end of retail investors because the level of money required in infrastructure is very huge. They don't have that quantum of money. This is why they are going to invest like mutual funds, small units, which is further going to be invested in infrastructure projects. This is the working of Infrastructure Investment Trust and Real Estate Investment Trust. Is it clear? Core assets and non-core assets. उसी के थ्रू मिलेगा, क्योंकि एसेट के वैल्यूएशन पे नहीं ना, उसको हम एसेट को लेके हम ऑपरेशनलाइज करेंगे. अगर यहाँ नॉन कोर है कि नया कुछ हम बना रहे हैं, तो उसका जो रेवेन्यू जनरेट होगा उसी से मेरे को पैसे मिलेगा. द होल आइडिया इज व्हाई एम आई इन्वेस्टिंग इन दीज ट्रस्ट. आई एम इन्वेस्टिंग इन दीज ट्रस्ट बिकॉज आई वांट टू गेट रिटर्न्स फ्रॉम इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रोजेक्ट्स. तो उनके रेवेन्यू से जो मेरा रिटर्न आएगा, जो मैं अकेले नहीं कर पा रहा था, अब यहाँ यूनिट से आई कैन गेन मनी. सो थ्रू दिस द नेशनल मोनेटाइजेशन पाइपलाइन इज यूजिंग बोथ PPP agreements, the usual PPP, lease agreements, and structured financing. The monetization is brownfield. InvITs, REITs वैसे भी कर सकते हैं in greenfield, but I'm telling you how InvITs and REITs will work here. कि ये monetization करेगा कैसे? या तो ये lease agreement देगा किसी एक private player को, या ये fund के through भी कर सकता है monetize. Which one? This is under the government itself, national monetization pipeline. Different ministries कर रही हैं. For example, the assets, road, railway, shipping, बहुत सारे structures हैं यहाँ पे. So they will have their own PPP agreements with whatever player they want to bring in. ये सिर्फ PPP agreements के through होगा. Otherwise, InvITs और REITs तो किसी में भी invest कर सकते हैं. The idea of InvITs and REITs is they create a special purpose vehicle which manages its investment in infrastructure. These are retail investors which are pooling in money. Now this infrastructure could be creation of a new infrastructure, or brownfield is the specific case of NMP में greenfield कुछ नहीं है. Monetization you can't do of a greenfield asset because कुछ बना नहीं हुआ वहाँ पे. Brownfield monetization is already created asset which you are giving out to something. NMP में this, and this is land or a building which you have with the PSU. This is NLMC and this is NMP. That is National Investment Pipeline. This is not a pipeline, वो infrastructure creation के लिए है. The National Infrastructure Pipeline, the government has analyzed that this is the infrastructure which we require, जिसके लिए we need this much of funds. So what the government is linking NMP and NIP is कि NMP से जो भी हमें पैसे मिलेंगे, we are going to use this for creation of new infrastructure under NIP. The National Infrastructure Pipeline is only a plan for creation of infrastructure, different types of infrastructure for which they have estimated a cost. इसके funds they are saying is going to come from NMP. NMP is not privatization or disinvestment. NMP is just a private-public partnership, just shifting the asset for certain duration and then transferring it back to the government. This is your non-tax revenue monetization. See what this is, state public enterprises privatization. Yesterday we discussed one thing, that article, under article D इसका language थोड़ा मुश्किल लिखा है. Under article 293 sub clause 3, if the states have taken certain money from center, they cannot borrow without its permission. कितना borrow कर सकते हैं, कहाँ से कर सकते हैं, this is something they decide every year. The central government decides it for them. So they set up the borrowing limits. Now in the past 2 to 3 years, what the center government has done, center government has said that if you do certain reforms, for example, if you do reforms in your power sector, in your agriculture sector, agriculture marketing और ration card, ऐसे 5-6 conditions बनाए that if you do these reforms, we are going to give you additional borrowing space. 0.5 additional मिलेगा अगर आपने कुछ रिफॉर्म किए, ज़्यादा किए हम और आपको additional दे सकते हैं. So this is how they are incentivizing the states to do certain reforms by giving them additional borrowing limits. Now this is something which the government is planning to do. The government is saying if the state privatizes its PSU, आपको जितना पैसा यहाँ से मिलेगा उतना ही पैसा हम आपको और we are going to give it to you so that this privatization happens. To incentivize, the center has promised to provide 100% of the realized amount to states from such strategic disinvestments. That means if the state privatizes its PSU and it is going to receive certain money, similar money we are going to give you, or we are going to allow to extra borrowing limits based on your privatization of the PSU. So this is, they are incentivizing state PSU by giving them additional funds. They have not clarified as of now कि पैसे ही देंगे या they will give additional borrowing limits. वो the idea flows from here कि जब हमने ये किया था, we had received a lot of success. So we are further going to incentivize you by promising you an equal amount of total funds, or we are going to give you extra borrowing limits. This is what the center is doing to push the states to privatize their PSUs. Not loss making. The idea is the state, the whole idea, why disinvestment? Are we just disinvesting the loss making PSUs? Majorly. LIC is loss making. BPCL is loss making. Whatever the certain percentage, is the government just moving out of loss making sectors? You know which is the one of the highest loss making PSUs? Air India to gayi. The other, BSNL. Railways is huge. 15 lakh log hai railways mein. To touch railways is a very difficult task. And also to do first privatization in railways, you will need to have an independent regulator. Railway ministry के अंडर होते होते कोई private player नहीं आएगा. Independent rail regulator के बिना नहीं होगा वो काम. One of the highest loss making PSU is BSNL. BSNL is significantly, it's not earning, and the government last year has announced that we are going to invest 5,000 crore rupees in BSNL. So the whole idea, what is the idea behind disinvestment? Why does the government want to do disinvestment? Do you think the banks are loss making? NPAs हैं, but are the banks loss making? Is SBI loss making or PNB? सब have recovered, they have good profits. इतना काम है सब banks के पास. Then why is the government talking about privatization? The government idea is that there is no business to be in business. Even if you are not loss making, वो एक dead loss है. What is the idea that you should not have private sector or government in business? इसके पीछे idea क्या है? Why this? Management you can improve. ONGC और बाकी सारी इतनी PSUs की management अच्छी भी तो है. This is something which you can control. Why? Government has no business to be in business. Why? To focus on governance, तो वो दोनों चीजें साथ भी कर सकते हैं. चाइना में there's PSU also, there's good governance also. Both can happen at the same time. Why they can do just one thing? And even if this government PSUs are loss making, don't you think private companies are also loss making? कितनी private companies हैं loss making? Risk. Why this idea? Because government has no business to be in business. Laissez-faire approach क्यों? Capitalism क्यों नहीं करना चाहता कि government को business दें? This increases competition. Government is a player, increases competition. In fact, this can have a very good competition also, government. You can have monopoly powers, government का player वो competition रोक सकता है. In fact, natural monopoly में तो government ने बहुत अच्छा किया है. Government has limited resources, it can earn money from these resources. If railway is earning revenue, ONGC is earning revenue, banks are earning revenue, they are getting resources which they can plow back and invest further. जो उनके extra profits हैं वो reinvest करें profits. उनको और investment क्यों चाहिए? They can be very good functioning corporations just like private corporations. So they can get money and also they can raise money from market also. Why is the government has to interfere? Unbiased regulation. Again, these things are parameters which you can control. Whole idea government has no business to do in business. Regulation हो चाहे capital हो, ये चीजें हम control कर सकते हो. The whole idea is that the government has no discipline of the market. The government has no discipline of the market. Anyone who produces in the market, it is doing it for a profit. If it is it is not getting a profit, that means it is loss making. Will it continue its operation? Any business, any player who does it in the market, it uses a capital. जिस capital पे उसको return लाना है. अगर वो loss making है, वो capital को return कैसे देगा? That means it has to close down. Now consider, does this principle work on the government PSU? This is what the problem of moral hazard. that even if I have a loss, I'll keep on operating. कि downside पे मेरा risk नहीं है. Even if I am continuously making losses, I will keep on operating because I am backed by the sovereign. This is why PSUs should not be. And the moment you have a moral hazard, that means they are going to distort the market. Consider one player is continuously selling at losses. It will be difficult to compete with this player. They can undercut the cost because the whole idea of government to be in business is also something welfare. If SBI starts selling the loans at a very cheap rate as compared to HDFC, even when SBI is incurring a loss, can SBI do this? It can do anything. Government backed hai. Consider the example here. If you are watching the economy, 5 months before the UP elections, the oil prices didn't go down. कैसे हो गया वो possible? Petrol, diesel, these prices are free in the country. They're not fixed by anyone. They are freely determined. So now if the prices of crude, they are significantly rising in the market, the prices of petrol and diesel should also go up. Why did they not go up? वो tax is different. Tax की तो बात ही नहीं करें, tax इसके ऊपर है. Because this sector is mostly controlled by the, you have the 3 big OMCs, that is, and you have other 2 private players also, and Rosneft, Russia का player है, Naira, which has also bought SR. So these 2 are private players. 5 महीने तक जब पेट्रोल के प्राइसेस नहीं बढ़ाने दिए गवर्नमेंट ने, they were selling the petrol at lesser price. They closed down their business. अगर मेरा प्राइस मार्केट में 100 रुपीज है पेट्रोल का and the government is asking me to sell at 90, who is going to take this 10 rupees loss? ये गवर्नमेंट PSU के थ्रू ही आप करवा सकते हो, ये नहीं उठाएंगे वो लॉस. And why they stopped operating? Because if someone is selling for 90, who will buy their petrol at 100? This is why they had to control they had to reduce their bills. Now what has happened? The situation has reversed. The situation has reversed. The prices of crude, they have fallen. They have not fallen in the outside market, but India is getting Russian crude. Then the prices of petrol and diesel have not come down. जब इतना सस्ता क्रूड मिल रहा है तो prices कम क्यों नहीं आए हैं? Because they are compensating for the losses they have taken for these years. Before the prices of petrol and diesel were controlled, these were called as under recoveries, जो government उनको देती थी, क्योंकि government उनको बोल रही है कम पे sell करने के लिए. This is why the concept of oil bonds. Before these 2 prices were market determined, they were controlled by the government. And if the government was asking you to sell less than your cost of production, the government used to give the money from first an oil pool account they had created, then converted the pool account to the oil bonds. वो oil bonds government issue करती थी. अब government ने क्या किया, इन 5 महीने इनको कुछ भी नहीं दिया. तो every company faced losses more than 20,000 crore rupees per month. So now they want to fulfill their loss. Now when they are fulfilling the losses, they are not reducing the prices. अब वो reduce नहीं कर रहे क्योंकि उनका loss था, इन्होंने तो कोई loss नहीं उठाया, तो इनके पास अब they have a very good chance of profits. And what they are doing is they are exporting all of their petrol and diesel to outside country to get this profit. They are not selling most in India. They are selling in India, but mostly they are exporting. इसलिए government ने इनके ऊपर windfall लगाया है. Windfall is because you are incurring good profits. Windfall tax in India is imposed on 2 things. One is export of what? Export of पेट्रोल हटा दिया है. रीड द न्यूज केयरफुली. ये हर 15 दिन रिवाइज होता है. डीजल और ATF पे है सिर्फ. Deviation turbine fuel and this, and the windfall is on another thing. Why domestic crude production? I hope you understand now. PSU से कैसे हम कंट्रोल करा सकते हैं. PSU railway can sell you at a very less cost. Metro can sell you at a very less cost because they are backed by government and they can still operate. This is why the government, I hope you get the idea moral hazard क्या है. The moment your downside risk is covered, you will keep on operating at a loss. This is why I said UPSC में अगर A, B, C option decide करके ही आओगे तो पढ़ाई नहीं होगी. Because if you know you fail, you have option B. This is a moral hazard. A smoker, when he buys an insurance, he'll keep on smoking because he knows if he gets ill, his cost is covered. This is a moral hazard because downside of the risk is covered. Downside risk loss is covered. Private sector downside risk cover नहीं है क्योंकि उनको कैपिटल पे रिटर्न चाहिए, मार्केट को पैसा देना पड़ेगा. गवर्नमेंट कितना लॉस करती रहे, गवर्नमेंट पैसा डालती जाएगी. This is why government has no business to be in business because of a moral hazard. Consider 2008 onwards, there was accumulation of bad loans in public sector banks. Why especially public sector banks? Because they did a lot of evergreening, welfare activity. वो तो फिर हमेशा से करते आ रहे हैं. One of the problems was lack of due diligence and evergreening. Why did they do evergreening? लोन पे ऊपर खराब हो गया लोन, उसको दोबारा लोन दे दिया कि पिछले पे इंटरेस्ट दे दो. दिस इज एवरग्रीनिंग. बिकॉज द मैनेजमेंट ऑफ द बैंक हैज नो स्किन इन द गेम. वो लॉस हो रहा है, बैंक का लॉस हो रहा है, उसने 4 साल बाद रिटायर कर जाना है. दिस इज द मैनेजमेंट बिकॉज दे डोंट फेस द लॉस. एंड कंसिडर इफ एनी ऑफ द करप्शंस और एनपीएस हैज एनीवन बीन पीनलाइज्ड, दे विल कंटिन्यू वर्किंग ऑन देयर जॉब. इतना लॉस या इतने एनपीएस अगर किसी प्राइवेट बैंक्स में होगा, ही विल बी फाइट द नेक्स्ट डे. This is a moral hazard which PSUs face. You will keep on operating because it is not your loss. No incentive, no sanction because वो government का पैसा है. The whole idea of PSU is government run. Ministry से पैसा आ रहा है, ministry का पैसा सब है, वो खराब होगा. Not your own money. This is why evergreening happened. This is why connected lending happened, where phone calls were made to the PSUs to give loans to certain banks. How could a Bank of Baroda chairman could say कि हाँ हम देंगे loan इनको? Can he say this about any private player else? कि किसी के साथ भी ऐसे allegations हैं, ना private bank manager is coming and saying, the chairman is coming and saying हम देंगे loan. He is backed by the government. वो उसके पैसे नहीं हैं, वो government के पैसे हैं. He is using the government money. And this is where NPA में there was 4-step mechanism. You first had to recognize your problem, then you have to resolve the problem, and then there was recapitalization and reform. ये एनपीए का एक 4-fold सॉल्यूशन बनाया था. अब ये recapitalization क्या है? This is the government will give you money to do business. Why is the government giving this money? अगर किसी ने इतनी बड़ी प्रॉब्लम की होती कि वो रिकॉग्नाइज भी नहीं कर रहे और रिजॉल्व नहीं कर रहे, वो बैंक बंद होता. People would have faced problems in the who were working in the bank. ये प्राइवेट पब्लिक बैंक में नहीं हुआ, ये रिकैपिटलाइजेशन आया विदाउट एनी अकाउंटेबिलिटी. दिस इज व्हाट इज कॉल्ड एज मॉरल हजार्ड. 60,000 करोड़ के लोन्स इकट्ठे कर लिए, डेट इकट्ठा कर लिया एयर इंडिया ने. 60,000 करोड़. हु हैज बीन हेल्ड रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर दैट वर्किंग? रेलवेज का ऑपरेटिंग रेशियो यू सी व्हाट इज, हु इज हेल्ड रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर दैट? दिस इज व्हाट इज द प्रॉब्लम ऑफ government has no business to be in business because you can't fix the responsibility. They are using government money. They are accountable to the parliament through the CAG and the Committee on Public Undertaking. They are not responsible to the market. We'll come to windfall tax. वो just idea दे रहा था कि इन्होंने PSU से कम कैसे करवा लिया पैसे, क्योंकि ये गवर्नमेंट ओन्ड है, मिनिस्ट्री है, मिनिस्ट्री कर सकती है उस पर कंट्रोल. I hope non-tax revenue is clear. What's the next topic? Twin deficit. What are twin deficits? At the same time you have a fiscal deficit and you have a current account deficit. Fiscal deficit and current account deficit together are called as twin deficits. Fiscal and current account. Single nodal agency dashboard. This is for the public finance management. Single nodal agency for management of finances for the government. This is a expenditure side method के management करने के लिए. This is a single nodal agency dashboard. Status report on external debt of India. This we'll cover in detail. First, every year the government comes out with 2 status papers, one on government debt and one on external debt. One the government debt which it has on internal resources and one it has on external. वो it is part of the status paper on government debt. The second is on the external debt of the whole country, not of the government alone. So 2 status paper every year, based on which a lot of questions are also asked in UPSC. First, what are the components of the debt of government? How can you classify the government debt both internal and external. What is the classification of government debt, both internal and external? First you have, what is public debt? They take from the, this is the debt which is contracted on the consolidated fund of India. Another is your money which they take from the public account. These two are called as the central government liabilities or the central government debt. When we say public debt सिर्फ वही debt है जो consolidated fund पे है. They also borrow from the public account, which together becomes the total central government liabilities of the debt. Public debt सिर्फ consolidated fund पे है. Public account से जो पैसे लेते हैं वो दोनों अगर मिला दें तो central government liabilities है. So one, there is a difference between public debt and central government liabilities. Then the government debt is also contracted from the external sources. This is called as the external debt of the government, which the government takes. This is called as the sovereign debt. And there are certain things called as extra budgetary liabilities. The extra budgetary liabilities are something which has been bought by the, but इस PSU की जो डेट का प्रिंसिपल और इंटरेस्ट है वो टोटल विल बी पेड बाय द गवर्नमेंट. दिस इज नॉट ऑफ बजट बोरोइंग. ये हमने PSU को बोला है डेट लेने को जिसका प्रिंसिपल और इंटरेस्ट हम देंगे. दिस इज व्हाई इट इज कॉल्ड एज extra budgetary liabilities, because this is a liability on the balance sheet of the PSU. So central PSUs को जो हमने debt दी है, this is both principal and interest will be paid by the government, is called as extra budgetary liabilities. Government guarantee, government दोनों principal और ये नहीं है कि वो guarantee is contingent liabilities. There's another term which is called as wait. गवर्नमेंट ने देना है बट हम गवर्नमेंट ने उनको बोला है कि खुद का डेट लो. द गवर्नमेंट इज नॉट पेइंग देम देयर. ऑफ बजट बोरोइंग आइडियली शुड बी गिवन बाय द गवर्नमेंट. द गवर्नमेंट डिड नॉट गिव द मनी. द गवर्नमेंट आस्क्ड देम टू टेक अ लोन. द गवर्नमेंट इज नॉट पेइंग फॉर दैट लोन. हियर द गवर्नमेंट विल पे बोथ द प्रिंसिपल एंड इंटरेस्ट. दिस इज एक्स्ट्रा बजटरी लायबिलिटी वेयर द गवर्नमेंट इज सेइंग कि वी आर गोइंग टू पे द प्रिंसिपल एंड इंटरेस्ट ऑफ दिस डेट विच यू टेक. वहां कुछ प्रॉमिस नहीं है कि वो डेट आपको हम देंगे कि नहीं देंगे. अपने रेवेन्यू से भी आप उभरो. There is no clarity. If the government says we are going to pay it, it will become an extra budgetary liability. This is extra budgetary liability. ये government अपने status में दिखाती है, not in the public account or there. This is extra budgetary. And this contingent liability. What is a contingent liability? Contingent liability is not a liability as such. But what has happened here? Someone has given a guarantee. For example, the government, state governments had borrowed money and central government gave a guarantee कि ये पैसे देंगे. अगर उन्होंने पैसे नहीं दिए तो person who is given the guarantee will have to pay. This is why it is called as contingent liability. अगर guarantee enforce हो गई तो वो मेरी liability बन गई. वहां मैंने पैसे नहीं लिए, मैंने किसी का guarantor बना हूं. And the person who had to pay, he stopped paying it. So now the person who has given the money will enforce my guarantee. वो जब enforce कर देंगे guarantee, वो मेरी contingent liabilities है. नहीं, guarantee है ना इसमें. एक्स्ट्रा बजटरी तो मैंने ही देने पैसे. आपको बोला है डेट मैं ही पैसे दूंगा, फॉर पीरियोडिक इंटरेस्ट है मैं ही पैसे दूंगा. ये गवर्नमेंट ने क्लियरली बोला है कि यू टेक द डेट, आई एम गोइंग टू पे फॉर इट, बोथ प्रिंसिपल एंड इंटरेस्ट. पीरियोडिक इंटरेस्ट भी मैं दूंगा और जब प्रिंसिपल भरना होगा वो भी मैं दूंगा. यहां पे गवर्नमेंट ने लाइबिलिटी नहीं है, वो गारंटी है. वो लाइबिलिटी तब बन गई जब एनफोर्स हो गई, तभी वी आर कॉलिंग इट एज कंटिंजेंट. कंटिंजेंट मीन्स बेस्ड ऑन सर्टन कंडीशंस. इट इज नॉट अ लाइबिलिटी एज सच. बेस्ड ऑन सर्टन कंडीशंस इट बिकेम अ कंटिंजेंट लाइबिलिटी. ऑफ बजट इज नॉट शोन, ऑफ बजट तो यहाँ है ही नहीं ना। तो ऑफ बजट का मतलब क्या है, वो यहाँ है ही नहीं किसी में। वो मैंने देना था, डेट लिया है, वो देना था मुझे, बट मैंने नहीं दिया, वो मैंने उन्हीं को बोला खुद ले लो लोन। पीएसयू के अकाउंट में शो होगा वो। कंसिडर the government had to take certain debt to pay to the PSU, right? अगर ये गवर्नमेंट पब्लिक यहाँ से लेती कंसोलिडेटेड फंड पे तो वो ये होता, या पब्लिक अकाउंट पे तो वो यहाँ दिखता दोनों जगह। बट हमने उनको बोला, हमने उनको पैसे नहीं दिए। What we said, you take the debt from the market itself. So ideally, I would have to show this in my fiscal deficit because I had to borrow and then give it to them. I did not do this. I asked them to borrow. So this is an off-budget borrowing because this debt ka repayment government has not clarified who will pay. Under extra budget resources, when I am going to say the PSU, you take a debt, I am going to pay. If they are going to pay, तो ये debt government pay कर रही है, both interest and principal. इसीलिए we are calling it the extra budgetary liability. These are the components of government debt. Now, what comes under public debt? Public debt has two components. One is the marketable securities which the government issues, both T-bills and dated. I hope you understand T-bills and dated. T-bills are short term, 81, 192 till 1 year. Dated are long term securities. And non-marketable securities. So two major components of the public debt. One is marketable securities and one is non-marketable securities. Now what all comes under non-marketable securities? So the non-marketable securities are: one, the government issues certain special government securities to NSSF. The NSSF quantum, the National Small Savings Funds pay, the government issues certain special securities for them. Then the government issues certain securities to international financial institutions. Now this is very important. This is part of the internal debt of the country. The internal debt, which is my public debt, which will include securities issued to international institutions. These are some securities which are non-marketable and they also don't have no interest liabilities. These are certain securities which we have issued to them because we had to pay them the subscription. India is member of certain institutions. In institutions का member बनने के लिए India has to give certain contribution or subscription to them. So these securities are issued as part of the subscription. This is why these securities issued to international financial institutions which are non-marketable, not interest bearings, are part of internal debt of India. नहीं, सब्सक्रिप्शन है ना वो, इसीलिए इंटरनल डेट है, हमने दिए हैं पैसे फॉर आर कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन. वो पैसा कहां से आएगा देने के लिए? This is part of my subscription fees which I am giving. For example, I have to pay certain money to them for being a part of it. For example, IMF may have to give special drawing rights. So that becomes my subscription fees for that. उसके ऊपर अगर मैं borrow करता हूं उनसे, that is part of my external debt. ये मेरा subscription fees है. For example, for joining the IDA under World Bank, I have to pay say 500 rupees. So उसके लिए I issued a security to them. You're not paying cash, you're paying it in the form of securities, which are non-interest bearing. But वो redeem तो कर ही सकते हैं principal value पे what they can. These are non-marketable, they can't sell it to someone. All of these securities which are internal debt, they are issued to special bodies, they are non-marketable. There are two components of public debt. One is marketable, which can be sold in the secondary market. These are all non-marketable securities. जो हमने उनको पैसे देने थे, पैसे की जगह हमने उनको सिक्योरिटीज दी हैं. NSSF को वी हैव गिवन सिक्योरिटीज. What exactly is NSSF? I hope it is clear. What is the idea of small savings? NSSF has a very important role to play because state governments used to borrow from this, they have stopped borrowing now. Any brief idea of small savings schemes? National Small Savings Fund. Insured, what insured? यार ये समीर बंद हो गया. PPF अकाउंट. हाँ, तो आइडिया क्या है स्मॉल सेविंग्स का? सोशल सिक्योरिटी. टू प्रोवाइड सोशल सिक्योरिटी. सो व्हाट हैपेंस देयर? हाँ, चल गया. Right. See, the government wants people to save. One savings is that you go to the bank. The government creates another instrument where the people can save. We want them to save because for their pension, old age, insurance, a lot of things. Sorry. So for this savings instrument, the government has started a small savings scheme. इसके 3 component है small savings schemes के. One is your deposits with post office. There are a lot of deposit schemes of the post office, both short term and long term. Savings deposits, long term deposits you can do with the post office. इसमें recurring deposits भी कर सकते हो. Every month you can deposit certain amount which gets locked in. Saving deposits with the post office. The other is the government from time to time gives out certain savings certificates. For example, the National Savings Certificate, Kisan Vikas Patra. There are a lot of saving certificates which the government gives. And also there are certain social security schemes. For example, what else? Mahila Sector. What's the most basic social security scheme? Sukanna Samriddhi to still is NPS. Oh, NPS can be one. What else? The most basic. Provident Fund. This is your scheme where you can save money for your pensions, future. Provident Fund, the government Provident Fund. So these are certain small saving schemes. इन सारी small savings का interest rate decide करता है government. और ये सारी schemes का पैसा एक fund में जाता है which is called as National Small Savings Fund. This was constituted under in 1999 and all the government money of the small saving schemes goes under the National Small Savings Fund. Government, Ministry of Finance, RBI has nothing to do with this. In fact, banks complain. Last year they had decreased the interest rate on the small savings from 6.5 to 6. वो controversy हुई, वापस change करा 6.5 पे. So small savings funds, Ministry of Finance, administered by NSSF, administered by Ministry of Finance, created under the public account of India, where all of the money of the small savings schemes is pooled and kept. This is NSSF. नहीं, पार्लियामेंट्री एक्ट नहीं, एक फंड मिनिस्ट्री ने बनाया है, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस ने, अंडर द पब्लिक अकाउंट ऑफ इंडिया. एंड सिंस इट इज अंडर पब्लिक अकाउंट यू आल्सो डू नीड द ऑथराइजेशन ऑफ द पार्लियामेंट. कंसोलिडेटेड के एक्सपेंडिचर्स के लिए आपको कंसोलिडेटेड फंड के यू नीड द ऑथराइजेशन ऑफ द पार्लियामेंट. दैट इज व्हाई द बजट. दिस इज नॉट budget. Public account doesn't require, it is bank like functions of the government. This is not under the budget. This is the concept of NSSF. Is this clear? National Small Savings Funds, the small savings scheme. So what exactly is included under the internal debt? There are few non-marketable securities. One is special government securities issued to NSSF. Securities issued to international financial institutions which are non-interest bearing, non-marketable. ये subscription है मेरा. See, this is important because securities issued to international financial institutions as a subscription or contribution, this is not external debt. Because securities issued to international institutions from multilateral agencies or bilateral agencies, वो मेरा external debt है. We'll come to that in a while. Is this clear? Then there are 14-day intermediate treasury bills. These 14-day intermediate treasury bills These are issued where state governments or even central bank, mostly state governments के लिए issue होता है, that you can park some of your excess funds in these bills. 14-day intermediary treasury bills are issued so that state governments can park some of their excess funds in these bills. नहीं, rate नहीं होगा, the government will give the rate. MIBOR का मतलब, MIBOR is interbank. What is the definition of MIBOR? तो interbank है, तो फिर इसमें यहाँ interbank क्या हो रहा है? Just talking about government. ये सारा government, see marketable securities जो हैं, how does the government issue these marketable securities? The first component which did internal debt, which is your public debt, dated treasury and cash management. इन तीनों का क्या होता है? There are periodic auctions for this, which decide the interest rate, consequently the yield. There is no MIBOR, LIBOR, कुछ भी नहीं, वो interbank offer rate है. उसका क्या मतलब यहाँ पे? बैंक से हम कुछ ले थोड़ी रहे. Have we mentioned anywhere we're taking it from the bank? Non-marketable securities will have a 14-day intermediate T-bills. That is mostly for states. There are certain compensation and other bonds. For example, under compensation, the compensation bonds, there are certain schemes which are started by the government, such as saving bonds, relief bonds, or sovereign gold bonds. These are special non-marketable bonds which are issued by the government. Again, these are non-marketable. Special securities against securitization of balance. Any pension funds having excess funds, we can securitize them by using those funds under these securities. And special securities issued to public sector banks or export-import banks. These all are non-marketable securities under the internal debt of the government. There are total 6 or 7 types of non-marketable securities. The 14-day intermediate T-bills, compensation and other bonds, securities issued to international financial institutions, securities against small savings, special securities against pension funds, special securities issued to banks, IDBI or LIC. See, all of these are special securities against special और also जो small savings हैं, ये भी special securities हैं. They're not normal securities. They're issued for this purpose only. Specific purpose issued securities, and these are your special securities under the internal debt of the country. So 2 types, marketable and non-marketable. Is it clear? Then we have the external debt. What exactly is included in external debt? External debt will be ECBs. ECB is what? External. Name itself says commercial. तो वो गवर्नमेंट कैसे हो सकती है? It is part of external debt, but the total debt of the country. It is not a part of government debt. Sovereign external debt is what the government takes. Loans, how? That will be public debt will be, yes, this is part of public debt. Sovereign external, this public debt here is internal. Public debt has 2 components, internal and external. The public debt which is contracted on consolidated fund has 2 components, internal and external. Internal के 2 component हैं, marketable securities and non-marketable securities. What is the external or the sovereign debt of the government? Foreign exchange reserves debt है. Borrowing from. There are 2 types of things which are included under the sovereign debt. One is called as your debt from multilateral and the other is from bilateral. Bilateral sources both under the external assistance program. Under the external assistance program, the government can take debt from multilateral sources and bilateral sources. and there is another component which is called as the other government debt. One thing which they classify under other government debt is any borrowings which we do from IMF, and that is in the form of SDR. And what could be other government debt? Can the government issue government securities in the commercial markets outside? Has the government ever issued oil bonds? Oil bonds किसको issue किए हैं? Masala bond. That is a part of this other government debt only. EDR, GDR. That is ADR, GDR में government issue करता है ADR, GDR. तो कंपनी इशूड है ये सब. एक्सटर्नल कमर्शियल बोरिंग्स कंपनीज के इशू देयर बॉन्ड्स इन आउटसाइड कंट्रीज. कैन गवर्नमेंट और हैज गवर्नमेंट एवर इशूड अ बॉन्ड इन द इंटरनेशनल कैपिटल मार्केट्स? हैज द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एवर इशूड अ बॉन्ड इन इंटरनेशनल कैपिटल मार्केट? एक्सटर्नल डेट में मल्टीलेटरल बायलेटरल है. That means this is from government, this is from bilateral multilateral sources. Has the government of India ever issued a bond in international capital markets? किसी भी जगह पे क्या गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटी कभी भी लिस्ट हुआ है या किसी भी इंटरनेशनल कैपिटल मार्केट्स में? गिफ्ट सिटी इज व्हाट? फाइनेंशियल एसईजेड. कंपनीज कैन बोरो फ्रॉम आउटसाइड. कंपनीज तो एक्सटर्नल कमर्शियल बोरिंग्स कैन बोरो फ्रॉम एनीवन. कंपनीज को मल्टीलेटरल एक आध एजेंसी पैसा देता है, एडीबी दे दे या फिर योर आईएफसी अंडर वर्ल्ड बैंक. अदरवाइज प्राइवेट तो मार्केट से उठाएगा. डिपॉजिटरी रिसीट्स, हु गेन्स मनी फ्रॉम डिपॉजिटरी रिसीट्स? कंपनीज हु आर नॉट लिस्टेड आउटसाइड, दे वांट मनी, दे इशू डिपॉजिटरी रिसीट्स आउटसाइड. वो बाहर जाके लिस्ट नहीं होना चाहती, तो वहां का पैसा चाहिए उनको. कंपनी ही कर सकती है. दिस इंडिया हैज नेवर डन. दिस वाज प्रपोज्ड ड्यूरिंग द पैंडेमिक. आफ्टर द पैंडेमिक there was a note on this. India has never issued a government security in the international capital markets. This has not been done in India. What India has done is, India has allowed foreign institutional investment in government security. Foreign institutional investments are allowed in government securities. Is it not the same thing? The difference is that here you are not issuing a government security outside. Issue आपने कंट्री में ही किया है, आपने इनको अलाउ कर दिया है उसमें इन्वेस्ट करने के लिए. Is this the method not similar? It is similar. You could have issued a government security outside. वो कौन लेता है? इंटरनेशनल कैपिटल मार्केट में फॉरेन इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर्स ही लेते हैं. We have not done this, but we have allowed them investing in the government securities which are there in India. This also has various mechanisms. We'll come to that. So that is not a currency, but is in form of SDR. Why should any debt be in any currency only? ये सारा इंडिया का external debt, will come to it, is denominated in different currencies. SDR could be one part. एक SDR एक unit of account है. It is not a claim on IMF. But whoever is holding SDR is, there is a unit of account के बीच both have a transaction. So if I'm holding certain SDRs more than something, I've taken the mismatches between the two countries. So that is a claim on certain thing. It's not a claim on IMF, but it's a claim on that. So it could be a debt holding instrument. Claim तो हो ही सकता है ना, अगर मेरे claim बढ़ गए कम हो गए तो it becomes a claim on something. It's not a claim on IMF. So that way you are right, ये currency नहीं है, but SDR में मेरे allocations तो हो ही सकते हैं. Redeem किया जा सकता है इसको. This can be that is why debt है. Debt बना कैसे है? Now is it clear how the classification of debt happens? Public debt is both internal and external. Internal is marketable securities and non-marketable securities. My contributions to financial institutions are non-marketable securities, is part of my internal debt. External debt is debt from multilateral bilateral sources and other government debt, IMF, SDR and foreign institutional investment in government securities. Is this clear? The debt profile. There's another term here that is called as the general government liabilities. The general government debt or general government liabilities. Now this is the total liability of central plus state plus union territories which are having a legislature. ये total debt है central, state और union territories की. One thing to remember here, it does not include the inter-state और सेंटर स्टेट ट्रांसफर्स और डेट्स, ये हम इंक्लूड नहीं करते इसमें सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट लाइबिलिटीज में. फॉर एग्जांपल सेंटर माइट हैव गिवन अ लोन टू स्टेट, दिस विल नॉट बी इंक्लूडेड इन जनरल गवर्नमेंट लाइबिलिटीज. जनरल गवर्नमेंट लाइबिलिटी इज सेंटर, स्टेट एंड यूनियन टेरिटरीज विद द लेजिस्लेचर. इन तीनों की लाइबिलिटी जो इंटर स्टेट या सेंटर स्टेट ट्रांसफर्स हैं, वी विल नॉट गोइंग टू इंक्लूड देम. So 3 things. One is your public debt, which is contracted on consolidated fund, which is both internal and external. And if I include the debt of public account also, this becomes my total central government debt. On top of it, if I include state and union territory with legislature, this becomes my general government debt. Is it clear? Public account, I'm coming to that. Is it clear? Any doubts here? Composition पे ये क्वेश्चन आ सकता है. एक्सटर्नल डेट पे दे हैव ऑलरेडी आस्क्ड क्वेश्चंस के डिनोमिनेटेड किस में है, लॉन्ग टर्म है, शॉर्ट टर्म है, क्या है. Wait, I'll come to this through the PPT. So public debt is A1 plus A2, that is internal debt plus external debt. Internal debt has marketable and non-marketable securities. Then I have external. Public account has other liabilities, which has money from NSSF, State Provident Fund, other accounts, reserve funds and deposits, which are bearing interest and not bearing interest, and NSSF loans fully serviced by the government. So public account में जितने भी components हैं, वो सारा become a public account liability. Because when the small savings is being given by the government, who is paying the interest? This is the government itself. So the government borrows money from the NSSF. This becomes your public account. Then you have extra budgetary resources. So the total liabilities becomes the internal, external, public account and extra budgetary. ये तीनों मेरी central government की liabilities हैं. Is it clear? Intermediate treasury bills, I've issued certain treasury bills which only the state governments or the central bank can take when they have extra funds with them. State governments और उनके लिए मैंने 14-day intermediate treasury bills issue करते हैं government कभी कभी. So where the excess funds of the state or the central bank, both state or central bank can only buy this. See, the whole idea is non-marketable. State नहीं कर सकता. State issue कहाँ कर रहा है? इसमें इशू कौन कर रहा है? ये पूरा what we are talking about. We are just talking about central government. Marketable, non-marketable सब central government issue कर रहा है. External debt I'll come to once again. Just wait. Public debt denotes the liabilities paid by the central government from the consolidated fund. Internal debt has marketable securities, non-marketable securities, and public account. Public account are the liabilities which are on the public account of India. Public account is not under the vote of the parliament. It includes first the National Small Savings Fund, the state provident funds, that means the provident fund contributions of central government employees. Other accounts include special deposits of non-government provident funds or any other subsidies. For example, if the government issues oil bonds, if the government issues certain fertilizer subsidy के लिए वो bonds दे रहे हैं, पैसे नहीं हैं उनके पास, so these are your other bonds, other accounts. Reserve funds and deposits and advances, sometimes the government is giving certain loans to special things, getting loans from special bodies, this is public account. Extra budgetary liabilities, public sector but fully serviced by government through budget. General government debt, central, state and UTs with legislator. One thing to note here that inter-government transactions are not included. We'll remove the inter-government transactions, both investment in T-bills by the state and central loans to state and UTs. Inter-government transfers नहीं आएंगे general government debt में. State government debt, a small thing about state government's debt. One, we have discussed Article 293, Clause 3. They cannot borrow with the permission without the permission of the center. One more thing, state governments cannot borrow from outside. State government cannot borrow from external sources. If they want money from external sources, it comes to the center government, which is then given to states. Under Article 293, they only borrow from domestic sources. One more thing about state government. After the recommendation of the 14th Finance Commission, barring 4 states, that is Madhya Pradesh, Kerala, Arunachal Pradesh and Delhi, all the other states have stopped borrowing from NSSF. They are not taking money from NSSF. Most of the states are taking borrowings only from the market. After 14th Finance Commission, NSSF से 4 स्टेट के अलावा सब ने बंद कर दिया है बोरो करना. This is the liability position of the state government. High cost था वो बहुत, because special NSSF का interest rate is very high. So state governments already भी कम ले रही थी. Then the Finance Commission also said you should not be taking that money. It comes at a very high cost. Already कम था. From outside, without the center, it cannot happen. In fact, they created another body also, the Investment Fund, Kerala Investment, IIF. That became a problem because उसके through वो off budget borrowing भी बहुत कर रहे थे. So this is where your Article 293 and the government says that KIAFF के through जो borrowing है वो budget में दिखाओ और ये will come under the borrowing limitations. वो body बनाई इसलिए थी कि वो no, external is not. What they were doing it, they were doing extra off budget borrowing. They were not showing it in the budget. They were borrowing everything from KIAFF. This is where the government said we will include KIAFF का borrowing also under your limits. हाँ, वो सेंटर के पास पैसा आता है, फिर वो स्टेट के पास जाता है. डायरेक्ट स्टेट के पास नहीं, वो सेंटर के पास नहीं. इट्स नॉट अलाउड. द होल आइडिया इज कि अगर गवर्नमेंट ने दिया है, सॉवरन की गारंटी किसकी है? सेंटर की. यही प्रॉब्लम है, इसलिए अलाउ नहीं किया है. हम वट एवर द गारंटी रिमेन्स विद द स्टेट सेंटर. नहीं, लिमिट तो हम ही बताएंगे ना, क्योंकि आपने हमसे पैसा लिया हुआ है. क्यों लेगा? वो ले ही नहीं सकता ना, वो लिमिट ही हमने बतानी है. बिकॉज 293 में यू कांट टेक मोर देन व्हाट वी आर टेलिंग यू, बिकॉज यू बोरो, यू हैव टू गिव मनी टू अस. आर्टिकल 293, व्हेन वी आर सेटिंग द बोरोइंग लिमिट्स ऑन स्टेट, वो आप कहीं से भी लो अंदर, बट लिमिट 3.5 ही है. इस साल में आप 3.5 से ज्यादा नहीं ले पाओगे, चाहे वो स्टेट से लो, चाहे वो आप मार्केट से लो, किस में. एंड मोस्ट ऑफ द थिंग्स जस्ट गो थ्रू दिस ग्राफ, मोस्ट ऑफ देम आर थ्रू मार्केट लोन्स. मैक्सिमम दे टेक फ्रॉम मार्केट लोन्स ओनली. दिस इज हाउ क्राउडिंग आउट देन वर्क्स. क्योंकि अगर कोई स्टेट ज्यादा डेटेड हो गई तो वो पैसा खा रही है मार्केट का. you'll see a lot of other things also, power bonds, other bonds. Now external debt, now this external debt is the debt of the whole country. This is not sovereign debt. So external debt has two components, sovereign debt and non-sovereign debt. Everyone is borrowing and not just the government. Government external debt is called as sovereign debt. This is the trend. See, trend is important because these things, it can come. It decreased from 21.2 to 19.9% from last year. 620.7 billion. Most of the external debt of India is long-term debt, not short-term. Approximately 80% of the debt you will see in most of the years, 80% is long-term debt, short-term debt is very less. The short-term debt is what creates the liability problem. Short-term debt is something which has to be repaid in 1 year. 1 year debt, up to 1 year debt is short-term here. So short-term is what creates pressure on foreign exchange reserves. Foreign currency reserves as a part of external debt, 97.8 coverage is till March 2022. This is how it has been moving across the years. Now share of external debt, creditor wise, those who have given money, the highest we have taken from commercial borrowings. This is what I was trying to tell you, सबकी borrowing है ये, government की अकेले की नहीं है. The highest is coming from the external commercial borrowings and the second highest is your NRI deposits. NRI deposits is also part of your external. Then you have short-term debt, trade-related credits is part of this only, bilateral agencies, multilateral agencies, IMF. This is my sovereign debt. NRI deposits बैंक में करते हैं, वो remittances नहीं है. Remittances are transfers. NRI are also depositing money in Indian accounts. They do it under 3 accounts. There are 3 options given to them. So under those 3 accounts, all of them is a liability. आपने किसी बैंक के लिए liability क्या है उसके deposits. So if NRI is depositing, this becomes my external liability. This is why NRI. Highest is ECB. Here you can watch the comparison also. This is in $1 billion. Multilateral, bilateral, IMF, trade creditors, commercial, non-resident. The highest you will see of commercial. Then you have NRI deposits up to one maturity, 139, 141, 130. Ye do maximum hai. Then you can arrange them in various orders. The currency composition of India's external debt, maximum is denominated in dollars. Maximum is denominated. This is what the UPSC question was. India's external debt is denominated in what currency? दो statement का question था, एक statement ये था. Maximum it is denominated in dollars, then it is rupee, SDR, Japanese yen, and then euro. This is the order in which we have the denomination of external debt of India. What? नहीं ये मिल जाएगा PPT. You can do it with ease. US dollar continues to be the highest, deposits in NRI the second, the following the same thing. Instrument wise, external debt maximum is in the form of loans. And deposits, bonds and notes, SDRs and trade credits. Now sovereign debt. Sovereign debt includes two things. One is the external debt accounting to the loans given under external assistance program and other government debt, IMF and securities. ये component है. One is your debt under external assistance from multilateral and bilateral sources, other government external debt, IDR, IMF and what? The securities investment by foreign institutional investors. This is how it has been changing, both multilateral and bilateral debt. You can just have an overview how it is moving. This is the composition of multilateral debt in the last year and the last year and present year. How much we have taken from IDA, IBRD, ADB, NDB and others. From country-wise bilateral debt, maximum we have taken from Japan. Maximum debt 75% roughly comes from Japan. Then you have Germany, very less from US, France and other Russian Federation. This is your other government debts, two major components, SDR and foreign institutional investment in government securities. These are the two major components. This year IMF has increased less from foreign institutional. Otherwise you will see maximum happens by foreign institutional investment in government securities. This is my total sovereign debt. Now how foreign institutional investment happens? The FPI investments in government securities, it is happening under 3-4 different routes. So my external sovereign debt comprises of multilateral and bilateral and other government debt, that is SDR and government securities investment, foreign institutional investment. Now what are the rules with respect to the foreign institutional investment in government security? Till 2015 we had one limitation, that there used to be quantitative limits. The government used to specify the quantitative limits, how much you can invest in government securities. For example, 1 lakh crore, 50,000 crore, quantitative limits thi. After 2015 the government has introduced a framework called as the medium term framework. Under the medium term framework, the government has now started from quantitative limits. It is telling how much percentage you can invest as a part of the total government securities government has issued. Ab quantity limits nahi hai, 1 lakh or whatever the money value. Now we are going to specify from time to time the percentage you can specify in the total government securities that exist in the market. How much you can do. Nahin, this is different. Percentage you can do in government securities, 6% is what they have specified maximum. This can change. After medium term framework in 2019-20, the government introduced another framework which is called as the voluntary retention route. Now what happens under voluntary retention route? The voluntary retention route, there are certain government securities in which you can invest where the government relaxes the regulatory norms. जो आपके स्पेसिफिकेशन नॉर्म्स है और अदर रेगुलेटरी नॉर्म्स हैं वो थोड़ा रिलैक्स्ड हैं. एंड व्हाई द गवर्नमेंट हैज रिलैक्स्ड? बिकॉज द गवर्नमेंट वांट्स द फॉरेन इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर्स टू लॉक इन देयर मनी इन द गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज फॉर सर्टेन लॉन्ग ड्यूरेशंस. वॉलेंटरी रिटेंशन रूट में लॉन्ग ड्यूरेशन इन्वेस्टमेंट है. यू हैव टू कीप योर मनी फॉर सर्टेन ड्यूरेशन ऑफ टाइम. एंड द थर्ड इज योर द फ्रीली एक्सेसिबल रूट. Under this, the government is going to issue certain special government securities, and the foreign institutional investors can invest in these special securities without any limits. So there are three forms of investing in government securities. One is your medium-term framework, under which we are going to tell you the percentage of the total government securities you can invest. Then it is a voluntary retention route, जहाँ regulatory regime थोड़ा relaxed है और पैसा थोड़ा long term के लिए आपको रखना पड़ेगा. And the freely accessible route, where you can invest in government securities without any limit. Under freely accessible routes, these government securities are going to be specially issued by the government. There is no limits whatsoever under the freely accessible route. This is the three different routes under which you can invest in India. That is foreign institutional investments in government securities issued in India. The government of India has never issued government securities in outside capital markets. If you see, external debt is only contracted through multilateral sources, bilateral borrowing, IMF SDR, and government securities investment by the foreign institutional investors in India. Government ने बाहर issue कुछ नहीं किया है कभी. Is this clear? Sovereign external debt. टोटल गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज में आप कितना इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हो? परसेंटेज, द टोटल. दिस इज दैट इज परसेंट. 10% क्या है? किसी एक लिस्टेड कंपनी में आप 10% से ज्यादा होल्ड करते हो तो आपको कंपनी में यू हैव मोर इंटरेस्ट. दैट इज अ पर्टिकुलर कंपनी का शेयर होल्डिंग यू आर गेटिंग. दिस इज नॉट दैट. दिस इज 6% ऑफ द टोटल गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज यू कैन इन्वेस्ट. गवर्नमेंट बोरोइंग में यू आर गेटिंग फॉरेन मनी. एनी अमाउंट वो स्पेशल गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज गवर्नमेंट इशू करेगा अंडर द फ्रीली एक्सेसिबल रूट, विच इज योर स्पेशल. बहुत सारे प्रॉब्लम्स हैं उसमें, बहुत वोलेटिलिटी है अभी उसका. अभी सिंपल सी एक सिचुएशन यू सी, व्हाट इज द प्रॉब्लम इन द होल अडानी केस? वो कहाँ बोरोइंग, कहाँ वो शॉर्ट सेलिंग कहाँ हुई है या कहीं भी बोरोइंग कहाँ हुई है? व्हेन ही हैज टू बोरो अब्रॉड, everything was fine until and unless he was borrowing from domestic sources. People were coming in India and investing. That was all domestic. The moment you go out, you have various things. और जहाँ पे भी government security yield ऊपर नीचे बहुत ज़्यादा हुई, it is going to bring a lot of volatility in the economy. So this is why it's very risky to do that. Government of India has never done that. बहुत ज़्यादा उसमें speculative attacks भी बहुत हो सकते हैं. यहाँ तो मेरे speculative attacks मैंने control किया हुआ है limits लगा के. एसेट बबल्स जो बनाते हैं फॉरेन इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टमेंट्स, वो बहुत ज्यादा गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज इंडिया की बाहर बन सकता है. बिकॉज आई वुड नॉट हैव कंट्रोल. हियर आई हैव कंट्रोल हाउ मच ऑफ फॉरेन इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टमेंट्स आर अलाउड. दिस कैन ब्रिंग इन अ लॉट ऑफ वोलेटिलिटी. इनफैक्ट दिस इज व्हाट रघुराम राजन सेड, यू शुड नॉट डू दैट. इनफैक्ट इफ यू वांट आउटसाइड मनी टू इन्वेस्ट, आप एफओआई लिमिट्स बढ़ा दो ना. दोनों से काम तो सेम हो रहा है. बाहर के लोगों को ही पैसा चाहिए तो उनकी लिमिट्स यहाँ बढ़ा दो. अंडर मीडियम टर्म फ्रेमवर्क, इन्वेस्टमेंट लिमिट्स फॉर एफबीआईज वर स्पेसिफाइड as a percentage of outstanding stock of G-Secs and the state development loans. तो ये लिमिट अगर 6% है, इसको 20% कर दो, होगा सेम ही. बाहर से इशू करने से अच्छा यहीं से कर लो. Then voluntary retention scheme, long-term investments, greater operational flexibility, and fully accessible route, where categories of certain government securities investors without any restrictions. No restrictions will be on these securities. These are the three routes through which foreign institutional investors can invest in government securities in India. This is the status of external debt. Any doubts you have here? One thing, what is trade credits? Trade credit was also a type of external debt. Trade credit, yes. Trade credit is given by the importers. There is two types of trade credit. One is supplies credit, where credit is extended by the outside foods in form of deferred payment. Importer ने आपको दिया, आपने पैसे नहीं दिए, ये आपका बन गया supplies credit. One is buyer's credit, where one of the players is borrowing money from outside for ट्रेड रिलेटेड एक्टिविटीज, आपने बाहर के किसी बैंक से पैसा लेके इंपोर्टर को दिया. बोथ suppliers credit and buyers credit are form of trade credits, which is money which you are getting for buying imports. Loans and credit extended for imports directly. Suppliers credit is deferred payment. Buyers credit is you are provided from a bank or financial institution from outside. इकोनॉमी ग्रो क्या करेगी? आपने उनसे कोई सामान खरीदा है, आपने पैसे नहीं दिए, या तो आप किसी बैंक से लेकर उनको पैसे दे दो तो वो आपका बायर क्रेडिट है, या आप वो उन्होंने पेमेंट नहीं ली वो है. इट्स नथिंग टू डू विद बिकॉज आई एम नॉट इन्वेस्टिंग, आई एम डूइंग अ ट्रांजैक्शन एंड यू आर नॉट पेइंग मी. ये डिलेड पेमेंट है, आप पैसे नहीं दे रहे हो, तो दिस इज नॉट इन्वेस्टमेंट, दिस इज द ट्रेड क्रेडिट विच इंपोर्टर्स हैव एक्सटेंडेड टू यू. तो ये आपका डेट हुआ ना एक्सटर्नल. This is an external debt and this is not a government debt. Government has not taken this money. किसी एक ट्रेडर ने लिया है इंपोर्ट जब करवाया. Then the three types of NRI deposits. You have three types of accounts in which NRI can deposits. One is called the non-resident external rupee account, the NRERA. One is your foreign currency non-resident bank deposit, the FCNRB. Conditions are slightly different. And the other is NRO, that is non-resident ordinary rupee accounts. NRI deposits happen in these three accounts. You can just go through the features. They're slightly different. One is the official debt. Official debt is called, which is type of your sovereign debt only. External debt from multilateral and bilateral. Private is from private creditor. This is the difference between official and private. Debt service ratio is the total debt you have taken in exchange of the receipts you have. This is your debt service ratio. This is some of the terms which are mentioned in the report. Proportion of the total debt you have, both principal and interest, upon the total money you receive, receipts from outside. आपके पास होना चाहिए ना पैसा उनको डेट को सर्विस करने के लिए. ये डेट सर्विस रेशियो ही तो इंडिया की खराब हुई थी 91 में. We have taken a lot of debt, we don't have the foreign exchange reserves or even our receipts, that is money was not incoming in terms of exports or investments. सर्विस करनी है डेट, both principal और इंटरेस्ट. डेट क्या है, सर्विस कैसे करोगे डेट? पीरियोडिक इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट्स और कुछ डेट की प्रिंसिपल भी देनी पड़ेगी, उसके लिए आपको मनी चाहिए. वो मनी कहाँ से आएगा? वो फॉरेन, नॉट फॉर दी फॉरेन एक्सचेंज रिजर्व्स. फर्स्ट यू हैव टू अर्न सर्टेन थिंग, those receipts, the current receipts you receive as a percentage of the total money you have to pay. वो debt service ratio है. Wait. You have taken certain debt. एक साल के अंदर कितना आपको प्रिंसिपल पे करना है, किसी कुछ बॉन्ड्स पे प्रिंसिपल भी देना है और कुछ पे. इसके लिए आपके पास कुछ एक साल में आपकी कुछ अर्निंग हुई होगी डॉलर्स की, जो आप रिसीट अर्न करोगे, इनकमिंग रेवेन्यू होगा, वो मेरा डेट सर्विस रेशियो है. कितनी पेमेंट करनी है, कितना पैसा आता है. दिस शुड बी हेल्दी इनफ दैट आई शुड हैव दिस शुड बी हाई, तभी मैं सर्विस कर पाऊंगा इसको आराम से. Not 2:1, वो दूसरी चीज है. वो what you are saying is how much foreign exchange reserve should be there and it should be 1:1. वो ये नहीं है. What you are saying is the Greenspan-Guidotti rule कि कितनी short term borrowings और कितना foreign exchange reserve. We will come to that in a while, but this is the debt service ratio कि एक साल में मैंने इतनी debt payment करनी है, principal और interest, और कितने मेरे पास receipts हैं ये debt payment करने के लिए. This is my debt service ratio and this receipt should not be the transfers I am getting from someone. ये मेरी earnings होनी चाहिए. Is this clear? The internal debt, external debt, any doubts here? Current external receipt, पैसे जो बाहर से मेरे को रिसीव होते हैं. हाँ, आउटसाइड, ये डेट सर्विस किस पैसे में करनी है? एक्सटर्नल. तो एक्सटर्नल शुड बी दिस एक्सटर्नल रिसीट्स ओनली. दिस इज नॉट माई इंटरनल अर्निंग. फॉर एग्जाम्पल श्रीलंका बहुत सारा रुपी है, मैं बाहर की डेट थोड़ी कोई मेरा पैसे लेगा. वाई विल यू टेक इट इन रुपी? इज दिस क्लियर? द कॉम्पोनेंट्स आर मोर इंपॉर्टेंट. कंपोनेंट्स पे क्वेश्चन आ सकता है. व्हाट्स द नेक्स्ट टॉपिक? टोबिन टैक्स. दिस इज जनरल. एक्सटर्नल करेंसी में होना चाहिए। हम मतलब डॉलर में, वो रिसीट्स जो हैं वो मेरी इंटरनल अर्निंग नहीं है। मेरी अगर डेट बाहर से लोगों से है तो वो मेरे रुपये की अर्निंग थोड़ी लेंगे। दे विल टेक whatever my external receipts are to service my external debt. Both are external. Debt is external, the receipt should also be external. Now what is Tobin tax? One of the problems is your foreign institutional investments are highly volatile. They can invest in the country anytime and also can leave. Now this can create a lot of volatility in your economy, inflow and outflow. To counter this, a Tobin tax was proposed, that foreign institutional investments are highly volatile in nature. They can create a lot of problems in your economy, so impose certain tax so that the volatility in the movement is controlled. किसी को भी अगर आपकी कंट्री में इन्वेस्ट करना है, impose a tax on him so that taking out the money he has to think. Capital account convertibility, it's not a tax. Capital account convertibility तो foreign institutional investments की limits हैं, FDI की भी limits हैं. So that means fully तो कुछ भी allowed नहीं है. We are not talking about converting your currency. We are saying when people will come on the short-term transactions, take a tax from them. For example, foreign institutional investments up to 1 year, they will have to pay a Tobin tax. क्योंकि ये volatility बहुत create करते हैं. This is what he talked about in general. Spot currency conversions. कोई भी foreign currency आपके यहाँ पर आके convert करना चाह रहा है, वो ये investment के through ही करेगा. तो आप इस वोलेटिलिटी को कंट्रोल करने के लिए शॉर्ट टर्म इन्वेस्टमेंट्स पे आप टैक्स लगाओ, लॉन्ग टर्म नहीं. लॉन्ग टर्म तो फिर वो बेटर है इकोनॉमी के लिए. लॉन्ग टर्म तो आप उसको फिर प्रोहिबिट कर दोगे. लॉन्ग टर्म तो इज बेटर फॉर माई इकोनॉमी. एफडीआई इन द लॉन्ग टर्म इज बेटर फॉर माई इकोनॉमी. आई वोंट डू इट ऑन लॉन्ग टर्म, आई विल डू इट ऑन द शॉर्ट टर्म इन्वेस्टमेंट्स कमिंग इन माई इकोनॉमी. द आइडिया हियर इज टू स्टॉप वोलेटिलिटी. टू स्टॉप वोलेटिलिटी इन योर स्टॉक मार्केट्स यू विल हैव टू इंट्रोड्यूस अ टोबिन टैक्स. हाँ, कॉल एंड पुट ऑप्शंस भी तो ये एफआई क्या करते हैं? नो, फॉरेन इंस्टीट्यूट, हाँ, करेंसीज, हु विल डू दैट? स्टॉक एंड people transacting, this is what they were transacting in currencies. People were outside, people were doing it. So we want to control the foreign investments to stop the investment. ये सारा हमारी इंडियन करेंसीज पे तो हिट आएगा. So this is what the volatility we want to stop. They should think before doing that. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, we are going to take a tax from you, so that it does not become highly volatile. You think before doing it. Dealing in this is, yes, they can create, but the point is how will they get that currency? वो currency तो foreign institutional investment है ना, so it is based on foreign institutional investments only, because that currency is going to come from outside. Your internal market cannot deal until and unless people are bringing the dollar inside. Who is bringing the dollar? This is bringing the dollar and taking the dollar very quickly. We need a tax on these type of instruments, external players manipulating your stock markets, since they are short term, which create volatility, because all of this is just for short term gains. This is not for long term benefits of your economy. So इस transaction पे Tobin says take a tax. हाँ, वो long term के लिए है ना. Foreign institutional investment, apart from getting the dollar in the Indian economy, what is it helping us? फॉरेन इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टमेंट तो ज्यादा बेनिफिट उन इन्वेस्टर्स का है जिनको यहाँ रिटर्न अच्छे दिख रहे हैं, तो वो वोलेटिलिटी ला रहे हैं कि जब नहीं दिख रहे तो पैसे खींच लेते हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल, रिसेंटली दे हैव टेकन अ लॉट ऑफ मनी आउट, सो दिस हैज क्रिएटेड अ प्रॉब्लम फॉर इंडिया. सो बोथ इनकमिंग एंड आउटगोइंग इज हैपनिंग वेरी क्विकली. तो उस वोलेटिलिटी को कंट्रोल करने के लिए प्लेस अ टैक्स. This will be, foreign institutional will bring in his own currency to invest in your economy. So this is a spot currency conversion. उसी दिन की वैल्यू पे ही कन्वर्ट करेगा वो. This is more technically what he is trying to say, with the intention of disincentivizing short term currency speculation. आज इन्वेस्ट किया कल निकाला, ये यही करता है फॉरेन इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टमेंट. So this is the speculation they are doing in your markets, and they do it on the spot currency rates. Spot currencies is today what is the currency rate, forward rates पे नहीं है. So this is nothing. We just have to see कि foreign institutional investment पे टैक्स है, क्योंकि वो करेंगे ऐसे ही, ये उनका मैकेनिज्म है. Windfall tax. Windfall tax. Does anyone have an idea what is the idea of windfall? Profit क्यों? Profit तो normal भी हो सकता है. Over profits हो, over profits मेरी कोई टेक्नोलॉजी में नहीं, over profits हो गए मुझे. Excessive profits. Pfizer has created mRNA vaccine. This is for the first time. Unexpected. Why it is unfair? This is excess profit which is not due to any company's performance. Company ने कुछ भी नहीं किया है. The company has not improved its process. The company has not introduced any technology. But I have got this excess profit due to certain outside events. And outside events means something which is outside the control of the company. Windfall, there is excess profit I have gained because of certain outside events which are outside my control. Normally also companies can have windfall profits, but due to their own doings, कुछ organizational step किया है या कुछ technology improve किया है, तो उनको windfall हो सकता है. ये हमने कुछ नहीं किया है, but profit हो रहा है. For example, Russia-Ukraine war, India got a deal with Russia and got the crude oil at a lesser price. Therefore, once you are getting crude oil at a lesser price from Russia, so the cost of refining goes down, or the cost of the final product, petrol, diesel and ATF, crudes and natural gas कैसे बनेगा? These refining, my input cost is going down, so now I have on the export of these two, diesel and ATF, I have given a windfall tax. Because I am giving you a crude oil at very less amount. तो आप उसको export कर रहे हो तो आपको बहुत ज़्यादा पैसे मिल रहे हैं. Input आपका मैंने सस्ता कर दिया. Export is you are earning huge profits, and this event is something which was not in your control. So therefore a windfall tax. Another thing, windfall tax is also on the natural crude, the domestic crude in India. The windfall tax is on two things. One is on export and the other is on export. Pay you can understand why it is there. Diesel and ATF, petrol हटा दिया हर 15 दिन में. There is a committee which reviews this action, and the other is on domestic crude. Why is it on domestic crude? Domestic crude के प्रोडक्शन को क्या चेंज हुआ? इनको थोड़ी रशियन ऑयल मिल रहा है, तो खुद बना रहे अपना. तो वो बताया था PSU का सस्ता कर दिया, तो वो यहाँ पर अपना चेंज करें. हाउ इज इट रिलेटेड हेयर? और इलेक्शन रीजन नहीं था, गवर्नमेंट ने वैसे सस्ता किया है. ये तो दो अनरिलेटेड इवेंट्स, को रिलेशन नॉट कॉजेशन. डोमेस्टिक क्रूड क्यों है? डोमेस्टिक क्रूड तो अपनी उनकी प्रोडक्शन कॉस्ट है. सो व्हाई विंडफॉल ऑन देम? यू नो हाउ डोमेस्टिक क्रूड इज प्राइस्ड इन इंडिया? How is domestic crude priced in India? Domestic crude in India is not priced on the production cost of India. Domestic crude in India is priced on import parity price. That is, we assume that all of the crude is imported in the country. So this import parity price becomes free on board price plus custom duty, if any, plus insurance charge, plus ocean freight or any other port charges. You know how international crude is priced in India? हम जो ले रहे हैं, wait, I'll tell you both. How is crude? One is coming from imports and the other is coming from, how much is imported? Roughly 85 to 87% is imported. 13 to 15 domestic production है क्रूड की. डिग बॉय, मुंबई हाई, काफी सारी फील्ड्स हैं, रावा. So imports and domestic. How is import price decided? Any rough idea? UPSC has asked a question on this also. नहीं, OPEC का तो OPEC is a price cartel. There are certain international benchmarks which decide the price of crude. So what happens when crude is produced? The idea of cost of production is very difficult to estimate. You don't have a lot of competition. So the idea of estimation of cost is a very big problem. So what we have seen is the developed field which are already producing of different areas, उनके अपने अपने benchmarks हैं price के. For example, whatever comes from the North Sea, this is called as ब्रेंट। तो ब्रेंट एक प्राइस बेंचमार्क है, जितना भी सी नॉर्थ सी के आसपास और नॉर्थ सी में जो भी क्रूड बन रहा है, प्रोड्यूस हो रहा है, उसका एक ही प्राइस बेंचमार्क होगा ब्रेंट। सिमिलरली कमिंग फ्रॉम यूएस, इट इज कॉल्ड एज द वेस्ट टेक्सास इंटरमीडिएट, WTI. So you will see in newspapers Brent crude, WTI crude. ये US का benchmark है. This is called as West Texas Intermediate. Any other benchmarks? Nigeria का benchmark is called Bonny Light. सिगरेट का ब्रांड नहीं है ये, Bonny Light. Then you have सिंगापुर का है, this is called तापिस. Mexico, the benchmark is called Isthmus. ओपेक एक प्राइस कार्टेल है, ओपेक अपना प्राइस है. ओपेक का फॉर एग्जांपल दुबई, एंड दुबई इज दुबई ग्रेड, Oman grade, and Russia is Urals. ओपेक क्या है? अब ओपेक अब इन कंट्री का फॉर एग्जांपल नॉर्थ सी एंड फ्यू अदर दुबई, ओमान ग्रेड, इन्होंने कंट्रीज अपना कार्टल बनाया है, ये ब्रेंड के प्राइस को ऊपर नीचे कर देंगे. वो एक प्राइस, ओपेक इज जस्ट अ कार्टल of few countries. They can control the prices of the benchmark because countries, participating countries यही हैं, तो ब्रेंड में प्लस माइनस कर दूंगा. This is how, if I am the majority of the producing countries are engaged in a cartel, they can alter the prices of these benchmarks. These are the various benchmarks of crude oil pricing. Now when India imports the crude, the Indian basket of crude comprises of two benchmarks. We include the prices of Brent and Dubai and Oman grade. ये हमारा इस प्राइस पे इंपोर्ट होगा. We take certain percentage of Brent and certain percentage of Dubai and Oman grade. This is the Indian basket of imported crude. The Indian basket comprises of two benchmarks, Brent and Dubai and Oman grade, where Brent is the sweet category and this is your SAR category. Sweet and SAR is on the basis of sulfur content. Sweet is less sulfur, SAR is more sulfur. तो इंटरनेशनल बेंचमार्क्स डिसाइड करते हैं प्राइस. इंडियन बास्केट इंपोर्टेड क्रूड इज डिसाइडेड ऑन ब्रेंट एंड दुबई एंड ओमान. ब्रेंट का कुछ परसेंटेज, दुबई ओमान का कुछ परसेंटेज. हमारा इंडियन बास्केट का वी कम टू नो दी इंपोर्टेड क्रूड का प्राइस. दीज आर द डिफरेंट बेंचमार्क्स. यूपीएससी का क्वेश्चन था Brent and West Texas Intermediate are what? Just as a very simple question, Brent और West Texas Intermediate है क्या? They are international price benchmarks for pricing crude oil. Is it clear? International, how we price the crude. Now, how is the domestic price included? India does not have its own benchmark because India doesn't have a lot of production. तो इतना है नहीं कि अपना price benchmark बना ले. When India doesn't have its own benchmark, then on what basis does India prices domestic crude? This domestic crude till your October, this was the marketing of domestic crude was determined by government. कि हमारी domestic field से crude किसको जाएगा, कितना जाएगा, वो सब decide करती थी government. And if the government was deciding the marketing of domestic crude, the price setting was, the variation, the bargaining was very less. तो प्राइस क्या, डोमेस्टिक प्रोड्यूसर्स व्हाट दे यूज्ड टू डू, दे नेवर प्राइस्ड इट ऑन देयर ओन प्रोडक्शन कॉस्ट. जब उनको बता दिया कि किसको कितना देना है, वो अपनी प्रोडक्शन कॉस्ट पे प्राइस नहीं कर रहे हैं. दे वर प्राइसिंग ऑन द प्रोडक्शन कॉस्ट ऑफ इंटरनेशनल बेंचमार्क्स. सो व्हाट दे वर डूइंग इज द प्राइस ऑफ द डोमेस्टिक क्रूड वाज बेस्ड ऑन इंपोर्ट पैरिटी प्राइस. दैट मीन्स we are not going to price on our domestic production, but we are going to assume that all of our domestic crude is coming from import. So if it is coming from import, if we are assuming everything is imported, will we just include the free on board price? That is, ये price है, for example, we are assuming we import everything from Saudi Arabia. So this price is फ्री ऑन बोर्ड प्राइजेस जितना प्राइस सऊदी अरेबिया में है कि पोर्ट तक सऊदी अरेबिया तक ले जाने में कितना प्राइस लगता है. बट दिस इज नॉट व्हाट दी, इफ वी अज्यूम वी आर इंपोर्टिंग, इज दिस द प्राइस वी आर पेइंग? वी विल ऑल्सो पे ओशन फ्रेट, ऑल्सो पे इंश्योरेंस कॉस्ट, ऑल्सो पे custom, we'll also pay port charges. This is what is called as my import parity. I am assuming that I am importing all crude. तो अगर मेरे को गवर्नमेंट ने बोला है कि मेरे को सारा अपना डोमेस्टिक प्रोडक्शन बीपीसीएल को देना है, so I will price it assuming that all of the crude is being imported. So if I am assuming all of the crude to be imported, my price of the crude will be the import parity price, which will be my free on board price, that is the price of that country, ocean freight, insurance, custom and port charges. So the domestic crude production is priced on import parity price, which is nothing but free on board plus all these things. वो अलग है, this is something different. This is domestic crude. For example, ONGC की field है बॉम्बे हाई, एंड गवर्नमेंट टिल दिस इज आई एम टेलिंग यू अक्टूबर 22 तक है ये. अक्टूबर 22 के बाद गवर्नमेंट हैज गिवन देम फ्रीडम कि आप जिसको बेचना बेचो, जिस प्राइस पे बेचना बेचो. अभी का प्राइसिंग टिल नाउ इज ऑन इंपोर्ट पैरिटी. सो नाउ ONGC is producing oil from Bombay High and ONGC is producing the oil and giving the oil to say HPCL and IOCL. तो वो इनको किस प्राइस पे देगा? वो इनको देगा इंपोर्ट पैरिटी प्राइस. इंपोर्ट पैरिटी प्राइस में वो फ्री ऑन बोर्ड कुछ भी ले सकता है. बॉनी लाइट यूज कर सकता है, ब्रेंट यूज कर सकता है, WTI यूज कर सकता है, कुछ भी कर सकता है. बट इट विल गिव देम ऑन IPP. इज दिस क्लियर? नाउ यू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाई windfall on domestic crude. Because of the Russia-Ukraine war, all of the other benchmarks, the price has increased. Now, if all of the prices has increased, that means when ONGC is supplying to them, ONGC is also getting windfall. क्योंकि डोमेस्टिक ऑयल प्रोडक्शन हमारा किस पे बेस्ड है? इंपोर्ट पैरिटी पे. इंपोर्ट पैरिटी में हम किसी और कंट्री का प्राइस ले रहे हैं बेंचमार्क, तो बाकी ब्रेंट का प्राइस भी ऊपर जा रहा है बिकॉज ऑफ रशिया यूक्रेन. सो दैट मीन्स वट एवर इंपोर्ट पैरिटी ONGC इज गेटिंग इज अ वेरी गुड फिगर. समथिंग विच ने हैव नॉट. उनकी प्रोडक्शन कॉस्ट तो उतनी ही रही, बट उनको पैसे ज्यादा मिलेंगे क्योंकि इंपोर्ट पैरिटी प्राइस बढ़ गया. इंपोर्ट पैरिटी प्राइस बढ़ गया इसलिए विंडफॉल मिल रहा है. इज इट क्लियर हाउ डोमेस्टिक क्रूड ऑयल प्रोडक्शन इज डिसाइडेड? Now this is what July of this year the government said this is going to end. Earlier all of the fields where they had to sell the oil was decided by the government. Now you have complete marketing freedom. And complete marketing freedom also means that you have complete, it is up to you to decide how you price it. And this doesn't mean they can do it on their own price. अभी भी वो import parity पे बेच सकते हैं, but they are free to do it. पहले वो थोड़ा लिमिट कम था क्योंकि आपने पहले ही बता दिया किसको कितना जाएगा. Price freedom doesn't mean that it will happen on their own cost. It can also happen on import parity price. Now fields are free to auction whatever domestic production they have. This has started from 1st October 2022 till to 1st October 2022 किस फील्ड से किस कंपनी को ऑयल जाएगा वो सब गवर्नमेंट बताती थी. बॉम्बे हाई HPCL IOCL को देगा 30% इधर 70 इसको, ये सब गवर्नमेंट बताएगी. रावा फील्ड विल गिव इट टू HPCL BPCL, वो गवर्नमेंट बताएगी. एवरीथिंग वाज फिक्स्ड. दिस इज व्हाई द प्लेयर्स कंप्लेंट कि हमारे पास प्राइसिंग फ्रीडम नहीं है क्योंकि आपने बता ही दी है किसको देना है. तो अब मैंने किसको देना जब इतना ही है तो कितना ही मार्जिन है मेरे पास ऑक्शन करने का. Now I'm free to sell to anyone, therefore I'm free to sell my price. I will auction it to whoever gives me the highest price. Here I did not have it, so I was basing it on import parity. This is why windfall on crude oil has been implemented. This is how crude is priced. Imported crude is priced on Brent, and this domestic crude is priced on import parity. Is this clear? हमने यही हमारा प्लानिंग दी पेट्रोलियम प्लानिंग एनालिसिस सेल has one formula for importing of crude oil. This is this. कहीं से भी लो यही प्राइस होगा imported crude का. इंडिया का किस चीज का प्राइस? So this is the price which they have to, the raw material price will be accounted for. They give the how much percentage of Brent you'll use and how much percentage of Dubai and Oman grade will use. See, one thing you have to realize, ये सारे जितने भी benchmarks हैं ये different areas के हैं, but इनमें variation ज़्यादा नहीं होगी, क्योंकि सारे लगभग क्या कर रहे हैं, एक ही काम कर रहे हैं, they are taking out crude from the earth. That's the only thing they are doing. So the prices will be nearby only. Very few differences will be there. So to give one price benchmark of imported, we have created this basket. ये ministry से ही आता है, planning में ही, the petroleum planning analysis cell, they tell us how much of Brent, how much of this will be taken in the pricing of every month. हाँ वो independent, वो तो special deal हुई है, तो वो price तो completely different है. Normal pricing ये है, वो तो special deal है. See, when we are importing, whenever you are importing, there is a very high chance of any risk. Any event can have a risk. This event has a huge risk. This is what I am telling you. This event, traveling of this. One thing you should know, that India does not have any transnational pipelines. There is no pipelines India have with other countries. So everything that is coming, this is in the oil tankers, special the tanker ships, जिसमें आ रहा है crude. Now this carries a high risk in travel. So whenever there is a high risk in travel, you will always have a component of insurance. Whenever the event, the risk will increase, you will try to insure the cost because you are incurring a huge money on it. So now this insurance, the services of insurance which are provided are mostly provided by US companies. So now what they are saying, if you do not agree with the price cap on Russian oil, we are going to increase the insurance cost. तो अगर आप ये free on board price सस्ता ले लेते हो उनसे, हम insurance आपका बढ़ा देंगे. Effectively we are going to do the same. This is they are able to do because they have a monopoly on the insurance services. This is what they are trying to do. Because of the special deal which we have, and they are not allowing because they want to control the war. So they want to impact Russia. Is this clear how crude is happening? And now windfall tax, why we are relying on domestic crude production? Because the prices are decided on import parity price. See, petrol and diesel are also. How are petrol and diesel priced in India? LPG, petrol, diesel, ये कैसे price होता है? How are these priced? नहीं, ये ऑयल पूल अकाउंट है तो बहुत पुराना है. अभी कैसे डिसाइड होता है प्राइस? हाँ, इंटरनेशनल मार्केट प्राइस. हाउ? सी, द प्रॉब्लम विद ऑल थ्री इज all are constituents of crude, but the problem is they come at different stages. So you can't have that this is coming first so this price should be this. Different stages पे doesn't mean that you can differentiate the price. This is just a normal chemical process कि वो different stages पे ही आता है. So it's difficult to price the constituent because refining gives it at different prices. The only thing which can help is if you have more number of competition in refining. Now India in the initial days did not have a lot of competition in refining. So the prices of petrol, diesel or even LPG, they were dependent on the import parity price. We are assuming that it is not made in India. Everything petrol is imported. So petrol ka IPP would be the free on board price of petrol, not crude, plus ocean freight, plus insurance, plus port charge, plus any other fees. Similarly, this is IPP is same free on board price of diesel, because we are assuming other countries have good pricing. LPG is same free on board LPG plus these. This free on board price for LPG is the price of Saudi Arabia. Aramco का जो price है free on board, वही price LPG का इंडिया में है. तो LPG is based on the import parity price where free on board is taken of Saudi Arabia. Now what happened here? India has significant improvement in the refining capacity. So India is also exporting outside. India is one of the largest exporter of petroleum related goods. Now a government committee was set up and it said that now we have good competition and the Indian companies are also exporting. If they are not competitive, कोई उनका petrol लेता नहीं. So if they are exporting, Our petrol and diesel prices should be based on the export parity price, assuming everything is exported from India. So when we will calculate the export parity price, it will only have the free on board price from India. यही मेरी true production cost भी दिखाता है. So we should move from IPP to EPP. But today the IPP is a very good figure because it has so many components. EPP is not. So this transfer from IPP to EPP will be a very big problem for the oil marketing companies. So what now we have pricing, we have 100%, we started with this 0% of this. So progressively we will reduce IPP and more of EPP will have. We'll have 80, 20, then move to 60, 40, and lastly we will have 100 EPP. But right now we are having this. So the prices of petrol and diesel, this is called as the trade parity price, which has IPP 80% and EPP 20%. ये हमारा पेट्रोल का और डीजल का प्राइस है. And both IPP and EPP will have free on board price of petrol and diesel, not of crude. This is how pricing of petrol and diesel happen in the country. IPP plus EPP 80% and 20%. This TPP will come in dollars, which will be converted into rupees, और इसके ऊपर अपना marketing charge and everything they will apply. On this you will have taxes, dealer commission, and marketing charges, and you will have the final price then. This is how petrol and diesel are priced in the country. Crude is priced on IPP, petrol, diesel are priced on TPP, that is 80% of IPP and 20% of EPP. LPG is on import parity, or South Arabia ka the free on board price. ATF same, everything this IPP, TPP plus IPP, IPP plus EPP, 80% and 20%. This is how petrol and diesel are priced. Domestic players. Aviation turbine fuel. Is it clear? Windfall. One-off tax, that is a special circumstance. It is not a tax which will remain forever. It's just one-off. For example, GST is something which is on production, manufacturing pe hai, value addition. So this is not a one-off tax. This is a one-off tax because of certain event we are taking. General anti-avoidance rule. There are certain strategies. Or we'll take a break now. We'll take a break of 5-10 minutes and then start here. See, general anti-avoidance rules. There is a tax to be paid and you have certain exemptions. So through various investment strategies and using the exemptions, both of them you can avoid taxes. So companies can either use exemptions or through various investment strategies, exemptions where they should not be taking that exemption, you are avoiding taxes. This is completely legal. This is not something illegal they are doing, but the government is losing taxes because of the tax avoidance strategies which is done by the companies. To capture this, there are anti-avoidance rules, both specific and general anti-avoidance rules to capture the tax avoidance strategies by various entities. The government of India did not have for a long duration of time general rules, specific strategies or exemptions pe thi strategies to avoid this, but now we also have general anti-avoidance rules to stop this from happening. In fact, this is where the government, to avoid this taxation, to avoid tax also has a concept of the minimum alternate tax. Certain companies were using all of their exemptions and these other strategies, and they were paying zero tax. This is something which was being practiced. Therefore, the government introduced a flat percentage of tax which every company has to pay. This is your minimum alternate tax. This was only working on corporates or companies. The alternate minimum tax, this is for non-corporates. Cooperatives, individuals, all the other entities have alternate minimum tax. MAT is for companies, this is for non-companies. Idea is the same, that they were not paying taxes using investment strategies and exemptions. So to have certain tax on them, MAT and AMT. General avoidance rules are rules and basics to avoid this strategy. CBDT has certain things on TDS. You can just go to notification. Double taxation avoidance agreement. See, in this term, there is a term mentioned, withholding tax. Whenever what's the idea of withholding tax? Whenever there are two companies in different countries, for example, in A, this is a B is a subsidiary of A. So if there is certain money which they have to send to A, if there is certain transaction which should have levied tax here, we will have a कुछ ऐसा ट्रांजैक्शन है जिसका पैसे इंडिया को आने चाहिए. सो वो टैक्स काट के वो पैसे वहां देगा. वो जो टैक्स कटेगा, दिस इज कॉल्ड एज विदहोल्डिंग टैक्स. Tax deducted at source and withholding tax are almost the same thing. The only difference being withholding tax is applied when the money is being sent outside India. The whole idea of TDS is that if you have to get certain income and you have to pay an income tax on that, तो आपका जो income जो दे रहा है वही आपका tax काट लेगा, which it will send to the government. Same thing with withholding tax. The company will give it, the money will be taken by the company, adjusted for tax, and this will be given directly to the government. The difference between TDS and withholding is withholding applies on outside transactions. Double taxation avoidance agreement. If you are taxed in one country, you will not be taxed in another. This is your double taxation avoidance agreements. Resident status under income tax law, resident but not ordinary residents, R and OR. These are the conditions. Automatic exchange of information for better tax purpose. India and Singapore, Switzerland have signed this automatic exchange of information. Urban cooperative banks. Few regulatory steps taken on urban cooperative banks. First, what is the difference between the normal cooperatives or a commercial bank and a cooperative bank? The cooperative का the structure we have, and rural में we have two types of structures. One is which offer long-term finance, the state land cooperative banks and the primary land cooperative banks, and the normal ones, which is a three-tiered structure. This is your structure of urban cooperative banks in India. You have the urban cooperative banks. These are also called as the primary cooperative banks. Rural में three-tiered structure है: state cooperative, district, central cooperative, and primary agriculture credit society. Long-term finance में you have two: state land and primary land cooperative bank. Primary cooperative banks, the regulation is with RBI and state cooperative or multi-state. If it is multi-state, the Multi-State Cooperatives Act will work. If it is one state, state cooperatives. Two regulatory bodies, this and RBI. For rural cooperative banks, you have again RBI plus state, and you have another important body which is NABARD का सुपरवाइजन फंक्शन है. सुपरवाइजरी रोल है, रेगुलेटरी रोल नहीं है. रेगुलेटरी रोल इज स्टिल दिस. This is your cooperative structure. And how is cooperative bank different from commercial bank? Profit motive नहीं. प्रॉफिट तो हो ही सकता है, काम कैसे करेगा कोई भी बैंक? विदाउट प्रॉफिट हाउ डू यू एक्सपेक्ट? प्राइमरी, देन व्हाट इज द प्राइमरी मोटिव? The whole is the functioning of both these banks. Commercial banks is a stakeholder promoter led entity. Cooperative bank is a member owned. So this has more democratic control. The whole idea is one member, one vote. यहाँ पे do you have one member, one vote? Based on the percentage shareholding you will have vote. So this is more democratic. One thing, how cooperative banks are different from other cooperatives. Cooperative banks accept deposits from all, not just members. डिपॉजिट किसी से भी ले सकते हैं, इन्वेस्टमेंट अपनी कहीं भी कर सकते हैं. दे कैन टेक डिपॉजिट्स फ्रॉम एनीवन. दे लेंड प्राइमरली टू members. The whole idea of difference between cooperative and commercial bank is that their members are getting most of the finance from these banks. This is why financial inclusion furtherance में cooperative banks have a huge role, because small ticket loans and to more members, community owned banks हैं ये. So उन community में वो finance ज़्यादा जाएगा, ले पैसे किसी से भी सकता है. And one of the biggest problem between the two is, problem is regulation between RBI and state. Both have equal powers. In fact, RBI for all the banking purposes has powers. State is for registration, for winding down, and for other purposes. It is the state cooperative which determines the functioning of these banks. And this is why you have problem in regulation of urban cooperatives. Both state and RBI can regulate urban cooperatives. NABARD का रोल नहीं है. NABARD का रोल rural cooperatives में है, and also it is supervisory role, not regulatory. Regulatory remains RBI and state cooperative or multi. Multi में है तो multiple state. Is this clear how they are different from commercial? Now the NABARD supervision के ये जो भी conditions हैं, whether they are doing it or not, mostly supervisory. Regulatory तो imposing the conditions what they can do and what they can't do. Supervisory is just seeing that the governance is happening as per the regulations or not. Yes, it can. इसको ये दोनों बैंकिंग से रेगुलर रिपोर्ट्स होते हैं. They see what exactly is happening, which they report to the regulator. Now, one thing, 2020 there was an amendment to the Banking Regulation Act. These are regulated under the Banking Regulation Act, cooperative banks. There are some changes which were made from the RBI in 2020 Banking Regulation Act. This is after your Punjab Maharashtra cooperative bank fiasco. So few changes have been made to the regulation. The act allows central bank to initiate a scheme for reconstruction or amalgamation. In fact, RBI has increased some of its power over these banks. Since RBI has these powers of reconstruction or amalgamation of a bank, doesn't mean the state cooperative does not. Power concurrent है दोनों की उसके ऊपर. तो RBI ने अपना थोड़ा डोमेन और स्ट्रॉन्ग किया है. Moratorium on a bank if there is lender is not making loans will be allowed to issue equity. One of the problems was they were not allowed to issue equity beyond their members. Now this has been allowed under the new 2020 amendment. Further, RBI may exempt any cooperative bank from provisions. RBI may supersede the board of directors of a multi-state cooperative for 5 years. Any cooperative can expand without the permission of the RBI now. And one important thing, the change will not affect the existing power of the state registrar. State की भी concurrent powers हैं. This is the problem of dual regulation of cooperatives. And exclusion, primary agriculture credit societies and the cooperative societies whose principal business is long-term finance, the two state banks for long-term finance, these two are exempt from these provisions. This is for urban cooperative banks only. Cooperative society, check your document. There are another type of cooperative banks which give long-term finance, this one. The state cooperative agriculture and rural development banks, primary cooperative agriculture and rural development bank. Short term में ये 3-tiered structure है. So इनके ऊपर plus PACS, इनके ऊपर regulations नहीं है, only these. नहीं. These one. रूरल. वो कोऑपरेटिव बैंक, बैंकिंग रेगुलेशन एक्ट के अंडर ही कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स का रेगुलेशन है आरबीआई के पास. डिस्ट्रिक्ट सेंट्रल प्राइमरी हम ऊपर और उस स्टेट लेवल पे दी स्टेट कोऑपरेटिव बैंक. Another thing which they have done is they have replaced the two-tiered structure to a tiered regulatory framework by categorizing UCBs into 4. So two changes the urban cooperative banks have seen. One is the amendment to the Banking Regulation Act, and the other is the categorization of urban cooperative banks into 4 tiers, based on which the regulations will apply. Minimum net, what exactly will be the capital to risk weighted ratio, the CAR, the financial sound and well management framework कितना होना चाहिए, different categories का different है. These are the two major changes with functioning of urban cooperative banks and their regulation. This is just a table comparing all. Regional rural banks. What is the idea of regional rural banks? So वो cooperative banks भी कर सकते हैं. Cooperative banks क्या है? So you can have number of cooperative banks which have members. Last mile तो cooperative कर सकता है, commercial भी कर सकता है अपने उससे. See the problem why RRBs were started. The problem is cooperative banks don't have a lot of resources. Their money generating deposits, especially rural, their resources are less. And the problem with commercial is they don't understand the rural market, the rural setting they are not accustomed to. Rural markets accustomed हैं cooperatives, but cooperatives के पास resource नहीं, जिसके पास resource है उनको करना नहीं आता. इसलिए the features of both were combined and we formed a regional rural bank. An act was passed in 1976 under which the regional rural bank have been formulated. The regional rural bank have ownership of center, state and sponsor bank. Sponsor bank is what is going to generate most of the resources for them. Most of these sponsor banks were PSUs. So regional rural banks to give last mile finance to the rural sector. The area of operation of these bank is decided by the government. The government decides what exactly, how much area will they cover. Will they be in one district, 2 districts or more than 2 districts? वो सब government decide करेगी. Money is going to come from center, state and sponsor bank. And since these regional rural banks have a specific function of financial inclusion, 75% of the loans have to go in priority sector lending. And this is the major cause of problem for RRBs. Since you are asking them to give 75% money to PSL and there is no other business they can do, rest of the banking activities are heavily controlled, maximum money they have to give to priority sector lending. Inka loan recovery is very poor. Most of the lending they are doing to the priority sector lending, loan recovery is very poor. And since this is already decided, how much center will give, how much state will give, how much sponsor. One of the other problems is they can't generate capital. This is why most of the RRBs were merged with their parent banks. Sponsor bank के साथ merge कर दिए because they were making losses. You started certain banks जिनके fixed operational cost हैं, but वो recovery नहीं कर पा रहे हैं और उनके पास और पैसा भी नहीं है करने के लिए. And for this, the government did few steps. One, the government merged RRBs with, reduced the number of RRBs by merging it with the sponsor. The government in the last 2 to 3 years has recapitalized the RRBs. And one other thing which they have done, they have amended the RRB Act and they have said they can raise money from outside sources provided they keep the center and sponsor bank equity shareholding up to 51%. Now they can dilute the shareholding provided they keep the center and the sponsor to 51%. This means they can now raise capital. This is 2017. They have amended the RRB Act to allow them to raise capital from other sources. Center और sponsor का maximum 51 रहना चाहिए. इससे कम नहीं जाएगा. You can dilute the state shareholding. They have even merged RRBs, also recapitalized them. In fact, RRBs face very stiff competition now from the small finance bank. This is the concept of the rural regional banks. backed by a sponsor bank, that is a PSU. 1976 Act. RRBs came into being after the recommendation of the Narsimham Committee. 1975 Working Group, Narsimham. नहीं कर तो वो बैंक के सारे फंक्शंस हैं, पीएसएल करना है, 75 फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन करना है. प्रॉब्लम ये है कि कमर्शियल बैंक्स वहां का समझ नहीं पा रहे लोन कैसे करना है, कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स के पास पैसे नहीं है. तो वो ये प्राइवेट सेक्टर में क्या है, तो वो हमने उनसे करवा लिया ना ये प्राइवेट सेक्टर 75 करके. नो, दिस इज NABARD इज अगेन सुपरवाइजरी रोल ओवर RRBs. I don't know the context question कहाँ का क्या था. The idea of RRB is financial inclusion. This is why you see 75% loans हम उनसे कराई प्राइवेट सेक्टर में रहे. NABARD is a supervisory body, will help them. Regulatory body is RBI. The 8 sectors which are introduced under private sector lending, just see the document. MSME है, the low income groups है, education, healthcare and all the other sectors have also been recently included. See, सबसे पहले ये बैंक काम कहाँ कर रहे हैं, इनका एरिया ऑफ ऑपरेशन सेंटर गवर्नमेंट बता रहा है, एंड द नेम इटसेल्फ सजेस्ट रीजनल रूरल. प्लस द स्पॉन्सरशिप इज कमिंग फ्रॉम 35, 50 एंड 51 द स्टेट. नाउ दिस 15% स्टेट. दिस इज समथिंग नाउ आई कैन डिल्यूट, आई कैन रेज मोर कैपिटल. तो मेरा जो सेटिंग है उसके वहीं पे मैं लोन्स करूंगा. प्लस नाउ आई हैव अ कंडीशन दैट 75% ऑफ माई लोन्स हैव टू गो हियर. दीज आर द सेक्टर्स जो मेरे को करना ही है. तो मेरा फंक्शन भी डिफाइन कर दिया, मेरा एरिया ऑफ ऑपरेशन भी डिफाइन कर दिया. व्हाई इट इज कॉल्ड रूरल रीजनल, बिकॉज माय एरिया ऑफ ऑपरेशन इज बीइंग डिसाइडेड बाय द गवर्नमेंट. दिस इज द आइडिया. सिंस दे वर मेकिंग अ लॉट ऑफ लॉसेस, द गवर्नमेंट स्टार्टेड मर्जिंग देम विद द स्पॉन्सर बैंक्स. ये ग्रामीण बैंक और ये सब, दीज आर व्हाट द RRBs. Financial viability is a problem because of the less capital. उन पे regulatory norms are high, they don't earn a lot of money. Regulatory discrepancies supervised by NABARD. Again, not regulator. Regulator banks का RBI ही है. स्पॉन्सर बैंक इस जैसे लेके PSU, PNB को बोला है कि आपको एक RRB स्पॉन्सर करना है, तो उन्होंने ग्रामीण बैंक खोला जिसका 35% पैसा स्पॉन्सर देगा. अब जब वो लॉस मेकिंग हुआ, हमने उसको PNB का ही ब्रांच बना दिया, वो बैंक बंद कर दिया. दिस इज व्हाट वाज हैपनिंग. नाउ वी कैन डू इज सेंटर एंड स्पॉन्सर कैन हैव 51, रेस्ट यू कैन डाइल्यूट द शेयर होल्डिंग ऑफ अदर्स एंड रेज द मनी. सेंटर का भी कम कर दो, उसका भी मैक्सिमम 51 रखो, रेज मनी फॉर मोस्ट ऑफ योर फंक्शंस. नॉन बैंकिंग फाइनेंशियल कंपनीज, the article is because the Supreme Court said state enactment will have no application to our NBFCs. NBFCs are what? What is the idea of NBFC? Non-banking financial company. They registered under the Companies Act. They are engaged in business of loans and advances, acquisition of shares, leasing, hire and purchase, where the principal business is finance. What do we mean by principal business? That means their assets should be more than 50% should be in financial assets, and income from financial assets should be 50% of their income. This is what is a non-banking financial company, where the principal business is financial activity. That means assets 50% more than should be in financial assets, and more than 50% of the income should come from the financial assets. This is what is NBFC. And how is it different from a bank? 3 things which they don't have. They can't accept deposits, they can accept, not demand deposits. NBFCs are deposit taking also, but demand नहीं ले सकते. Do not form part of the payment and settlement system, and deposit insurance facility is not provided to them. Regulation of NBFCs, it is under RBI. Some NBFCs registration is not under RBI. They have been exempted from RBI, such as venture capitalist funds, merchant banking companies which are with SEBI, insurance companies with IRDA, Nidhi companies with the MCA, the Ministry of the Companies Act, and the chit companies under state governments. Some of the NBFCs, the registration are with their respective sectoral regulators, not with the RBI. Majority are with the RBI. And one thing more, NBFCs are regulated under the RBI Act 1934. Banks are regulated under Banking Regulation Act. Cooperatives and commercial banks are regulated under Banking Regulation Act 1949. NBFCs are regulated under RBI Act 1934. Now they've changed certain frameworks. They have decided, they have separated the NBFCs into 4 categories: the base layer, middle, upper and top layer. And how exactly have they distributed these NBFCs in different layers? It's based on activity at the base and the middle layer, what activities they are doing, and in the top layer it is based on the size and scale of significance. This is how NBFCs. So their activity will determine what are included here. These two are activity based. What will be included in upper and top layer? It is based on size and scale of significance. Based on their 4-fold classification, their regulation is determined. This is NBFC, scale based framework. It's based on activity for the first 2 layers, the upper layer size and scale of significance. Amendment to Nidhi rules. What are Nidhi companies? What's the idea of Nidhi companies? Chit fund. Is it a chit fund? In fact, chit fund तो काम नहीं कर सकता निधि. Nidhi is not involved in chit fund business. Mutual funds. Mutual saving societies which collect and also lend to only the members. This is what the idea of Nidhi companies, collection and lending only to the members. That is they cannot do it beyond members. They can't collect money beyond members, also can't lend it beyond members. They are mutual saving societies. There are some businesses which they can't do. Saving habits के लिए बनाई है ये. Something which they can't do. They can't deal with chit funds. What are chit funds? Chit funds is what? वो पैसा डबल करने वाली scheme is not chit fund. That is a pyramid scheme, which is illegal. What happens in a chit fund? Chit fund is a contributory scheme. Now what happens here? 5 members contributing 100 rupees each every month. So now you have collected 500. Out of these 5, 1 member will get this 500. इन्हीं 5 में ऑक्शन होगा. किटी पार्टी में होता है. किटी पार्टी इज चिट फंड ओनली. अपार्ट फ्रॉम प्लेइंग तंबोला एंड चिट चैट, वो ये काम के लिए होती है कि 5 players giving 100 rupees every month, they will receive 500 which they are going to, 1 member is going to auction. The profit is going to be distributed amongst the rest 4. Every 5 months this is going to happen. Problem is जो पहले पैसे दे देता वो next 4 महीने गायब. This is mostly what happens in chit fund. So Nidhi companies is borrowing. 500 को चाहिए ना 500, तो वो ऑक्शन करेंगे. मैं 450 में ले लूँ, मैं 400 में. So first person who is taking, there are 3 people who are saying I am ready to take the 500. How do you calculate? The idea of chit fund is कि हम सबकी चिट निकालेंगे, जिसकी चिट निकली उसको मिलेगा. बट नॉर्मली चिट नहीं होता, इसमें ऑक्शंस होते हैं. नाम वहीं से आया है चिट. सो ऑक्शन होगा तो जिसको ज़्यादा ज़रूरत है वो कम में ले लेगा. For example, 410. So 90 rupees is the profit. So 90 rupees will be distributed amongst the 4, or who is running the scheme will take maximum of it. इसमें एक इंटरमीडिएरी भी होता है जो कंपनी चला रहा है. वो नॉर्मली एक कॉन्ट्रीब्यूटर एक कंपनी स्टार्ट कर रही है जो मेंबर्स लाई है, तो वो कंपनी अपनी ऑपरेशनल कॉस्ट रख लेगी उसमें, प्लस वो पैसे रख सकती है, बाकी वो बाकी मेंबर्स में भी डिवाइड कर सकती है. दिस इज अ चिट फंड. दिस इज डिफरेंट फ्रॉम निधि. एंड निधि फंड्स, निधि कंपनीज कांट डू चिट एक्टिविटीज. They cannot deal with chit funds. They can't do hire purchase finance, leasing finance, insurance और security business. Member से पैसे लेंगे, member को ही लोन देंगे, ये काम नहीं कर सकते. Only individual members are allowed in Nidhi companies. Self-help group, but self-help group is mostly, it's not just सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप का कॉन्सेप्ट इज उनके पास आपस में ही लैंड करने के पैसे होते तो फिर कोई जरूरत नहीं होती. सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप इज जस्ट स्टार्टेड विद द पूल देयर सेविंग्स एंड द होल ग्रुप विल डू सर्टेन बिजनेस फॉर विच दे विल गेट अ लोन फ्रॉम समथिंग. नॉट उसका कॉन्सेप्ट इज डिफरेंट. निधि इज म्यूचुअल सेविंग सोसाइटीज. सेव अमंग्स योरसेल्फ, लेंड अमंग्स योरसेल्फ. म्यूचुअल सेविंग. इंटरेस्ट यस, वो सोसाइटी चलेगी कैसे? द कंपनी हाउ इट विल फंक्शन. फ्री में फिर तो एवरीबडी इज गोइंग टू गेट, वो तो फिर कुछ प्रॉब्लम ही नहीं है. Current account you're saving and just doing the other things you're not doing. For deposits you're not taking from someone else कि आपको उनको वो interest देना पड़ेगा. They are registered under Companies Act only. It is a type of an NBFC which is regulated under the Companies Act. Companies Act इसका regulation है. In fact, this is the only thing. Nidhi rules, Companies Act. Ministry of Corporate Affairs is what regulates Nidhi companies. It is an NBFC, non-banking financial company. Financial Service Institution Bureau. The Bank Board Bureau has been replaced by this. See, one thing, Bank Board Bureau, already 2-3 questions have come on Bank Board Bureau. Where you have to focus here, set up under the Department of Financial Service and what functions it can do. See, 2-3 things. Not just banks but also financial institutions. And one more thing, it can also help in developing business strategies and capital. This statement can be confusing because it's not just related to appointment, transfer, extension or management structure, but business strategies or capital raising plans, maybe it can help. A more permanent form of financial institution or Bank Board Bureau. The whole idea was different what PJ Nayak had committed, but this is what we have right now. Set up under the financial institution, the pension institutions, the insurance companies, anything. So this is what the top management will be highlighted or will be recommended by them. Final decision government, recommended by them. The composition can also be asked. Who exactly are the members? Banking system liquidity. This went in deficit mode. That means liquidity in the whole system was less. More requirement of funds from the RBI as compared to the parking of funds with the RBI. This was the banking system liquidity. More requirement of funds from the RBI under the liquidity adjustment facility. Now, why was liquidity short? Why deficit mode? Few reasons which have explained the deficit, the lack of or the less liquidity in the banking system. One is advance tax payments by the companies. So a lot of companies can pay an advance tax. If they're paying advance tax, that means they're reducing the deposits in the banks. Less liquidity. Higher credit growth, more taking as compared to deposit growth, less liquidity. Ballooning government cash balances. That means the government is not using the money, the government expenditure is low. If the government is not making the expenditure, that means the liquidity will be short. Plus another thing that was happening during this time, the government, we were facing very high pressures of devaluation, which the RBI was trying to manage. And if the RBI is trying to manage devaluation, that means the RBI is going to sell. It was trying to increase the supply of dollars. And if it's going to sell dollars, it is going to absorb rupees. This is why you had banking system liquidity in a deficit mode. People making more advance payments, government sitting on a lot of cash balances, not spending them, more credit growth as compared to deposit, and RBI absorbing the rupee. These are the reasons for this is company behavior of the company. किसी को भी कंपनीज को लग रहा है they can make more advance tax payments, will be better for them, लास्ट में इतना नहीं देना पड़ेगा तो जल्दी अभी दे देता है क्योंकि liability एक बार आएगी मार्च में, so why not before. This is just a behavioral factor which you can observe. कोई special reason नहीं है कि ऐसा कंपनीज ने क्यों किया. This is what has led to the shortage of bank liquidity. Now what could be the impact of this liquidity deficit? If there is less money, the cost of money will rise. The biggest is that your cost of money, increase cost of borrowed funds. Why? Liquidity short है तो मेरे को डर किस चीज का है? ये तो एक नॉर्मल सिचुएशन हो सकती है, पैसे कम है, बैंक रन क्यों होगा? बैंक रन इज व्हेन यू लूज ट्रस्ट इन द बैंक. Why will you lose trust here? This is a total banking system liquidity. किसी एक बैंक के साथ नहीं हो रहा, सबके साथ हो रहा है. Why would you lose trust? RBI will do certain things to improve the liquidity. So bank can give it. कोई ये थोड़ी है कि सिर्फ एक ही वो है. मतलब बैंक क्यों नहीं दे पाएगा? लिक्विडिटी कम है, ये थोड़ी है कि बिल्कुल नहीं है. And why will people run towards the bank? Why? What is the next best option they have? And why are they losing trust in the banks? Did you run to your bank to get the money because you knew liquidity is less? वो तो नहीं होगा ना. Parking funds with the RBI, they were definite. Why will they do that? If I am creating more loans and getting more interest rate, why will I do that? No, liquidity deficit because the RBI has many functions to do at the same time. Right now it is trying to control what? It was trying to manage the exchange rate. It was not talking about liquidity, it was trying to manage the exchange rate. जिसका एक implication हुआ कि liquidity कम हो गई. उसको deal करने के लिए I can do another step. But right now one step was managing the exchange rate. This is why we will discuss, this is why one function was given to RBI under monetary policy, that is manage price. Because RBI has number of functions and each of the functions are interrelated. We'll come to that in inflation. Less money, कम पैसा है तो cost बढ़नी जाएगी lending की. Asset quality and restructuring, NPAs. When exactly is a asset qualified as NPA? Substandard asset, doubtful and loss. I hope the categorization of NPA is clear. Reforms also related to NPAs, what the bank have been doing. This is an often repeated topic. Recovery and restructuring measures. One is your debt recovery tribunal. Debt recovery tribunal in India was introduced when? After the recommendation of Narsimham I. The Debt Recovery Tribunal Act was passed in 1993. So under this we have the Debt Recovery Tribunal and the Debt Recovery Appellate Tribunal. One of the problems consistently faced in the banks was the low recovery rate. So jiske liye we have Debt Recovery Tribunals, 3 debt recovery. Under IBC, individual solvency is handled by Debt Recovery Tribunals. For companies it is handled by NCLT. NCLT and NCLAT. For individuals it is DRTs. It also hears case against SARFAESI. What does SARFAESI say? Without involving the court, they can sell off your collateral. This is the power under SARFAESI. It guards the financial institutions from loan defaulters by allowing them to take control of securities pledged against the loan without the involvement of court. Asset reconstruction companies, another thing which were introduced under the SARFAESI Act. Under the SARFAESI Act, we have the asset reconstruction companies. What is the role of asset reconstruction company? This is what we call as the bad bank. What is asset reconstruction company? These ARCs, they borrow certain bad loans from the banks. Now what is the ARC helping in? Since banks have these bad loans on their books, they will have to keep a certain NPS. The biggest problem is that you have to keep a provision. You have to keep some of your money to back the NPA. This provision increases when it moves from standard asset to doubtful to loss. Provision ज़्यादा है. So my bank balance sheet is impacted by the number of bad loans I have. So I try to transfer the bad loans to an asset reconstruction company. Now from where does the asset reconstruction company get the money? One is, the whole idea of the asset reconstruction company is to get value from these bad loans. is to turn around them. For this, asset reconstruction companies also have an asset management company. So this is the ARC AMC structure. ARC buys the bad loans and AMC tries to restructure those bad loans. For raising money, ARCs, they get it from certain big buyers which are called as constitutional or the qualified buyers. They give money to the ARC and in return the ARC gives a security receipt. ARC के पास पैसे नहीं है इतने कि वो बैड लोन से रिकवर करेगा तभी कुछ पैसे दे पाएगा. So for this, qualified institutional banks, they offer security receipt where the underlying value of this security receipt comes from the bad loan. So the security receipt is getting the value from the underlying bad loan. This bad loan, whatever recovery I will have, this is what the underlying value of security receipt. This whole process is called as securitization. I have issued a security receipt to a qualified buyer whose value is being driven from the bad loan. This is how ARCs operate. What? नहीं है अभी. NARCL तो गवर्नमेंट स्पॉन्सर्ड. दिस इज पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स एंड प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक्स स्पॉन्सर्ड एक ARC स्पेशल है. डजंट मीन अदर ARCs आर नॉट वर्किंग. ये तो प्राइवेट कंपनीज हैं which are restructuring loans. ये तो बिल्कुल कर सकते हैं. See, what is the general problem which these ARCs face? One is the problem of valuation of this bad loan. Bank will try to have maximum value, it will not give it at a cheap cost. ARCs will take it at a cheap cost. And the second is the recovery problem, how much they can recover from it. And if they don't recover a good amount for it, security receipts की ज़्यादा value नहीं होगी. So what has happened in India is security receipts do not have a secondary market. A lot of people don't buy these security receipts because they know the recovery from the bad loan is not good enough. They recover, they can change the management structure. अब वो कंपनी इनके पास है, उसका मैनेजमेंट स्ट्रक्चर चेंज कर सकते हैं, उसको रीफाइनेंसिंग प्रोवाइड कर सकते हैं. दे कैन यूज एनी नंबर, दे कैन कन्वर्ट डेट इनटू इक्विटी, दे कैन डू एनीथिंग. नो, इट्स नॉट अ कॉस्ट. एक प्राइवेट कंपनी है जिसने एक बैड कंपनी जो पैसे नहीं दे पा रही थी वो ले ली, एक्वायर कर ली बैंक से. अब उसका वो मैनेजमेंट स्ट्रक्चर चेंज करे, रीफाइनेंसिंग करे, उसकी बिजनेस स्ट्रैटेजी चेंज करे, कुछ भी करके वो अब उसको वैल्यू निकालना है. सेल, वो लास्ट लिक्विडेशन, वो तो सबसे कम वैल्यू आएगी सेल करने से. हु इज गोइंग टू बाय? अगर मैंने ही 5,000 करोड़ की कंपनी 2,000 करोड़ में बेची है तो मैं और आगे बेचूंगा और मैं खुद ही रिकवर नहीं कर पाया, उसकी वैल्यू बहुत कम है. दिस वाज द बिगेस्ट प्रॉब्लम विद ARC, दैट द रिकवरी रेट्स आर वेरी लो. DRT is a body created by the government which is trying to recover the loan from individuals who are not paying money. वो DRT है. ARC companies के लिए है, asset reconstruction companies which are going to buy these bad loans from the banks. SARFAESI. This is registered under SARFAESI and regulated by RBI. SARFAESI एक्ट में ये बोलते हैं कि अगर आपने लोन लिया है बैंक से, आपने सिक्योरिटी दी है, बैंक वो सिक्योरिटी बेच सकता है विदाउट कोर्ट. अर्लियर पीपल यूज्ड टू गो टू द कोर्ट दैट व्हाई आर दे सेलिंग, आई विल रीपे. वो सेल नहीं करने देते, दे यूज्ड टू एक्सटेंड. सो नाउ अंडर SARFAESI एक्ट यू हैव द पावर, द बैंक हैज द पावर टू सेल ऑफ द कोलेटरल यू हैव गिवन. क्वासी जुडिशियल फंक्शन ऑफ द बैंक्स. ARC is registered under, they started the thing of ARC कि ARCs भी अब इंडिया में हो सकते हैं. Registration was allowed. Hair cut, bad loans अगर ये जब बिक रहा है तो they are going to sell it at certain percentage loss. This is hair cut. कितना लॉस लिया बैंक ने? 5,000 करोड़ का ये था लोन. I did not sell it for 5,000 crore. I sold it for 3,000 crore. So this is my 2,000 crore is my hair cut. Hair cut is how much value the bank has lost. रिकवरी बैंक को कुछ नहीं मिला. अगर बैंक ने 5,000 का 500 करोड़ में दिया, हेयर कट इज 4,500 करोड़, क्या मिला बैंक को? इनके मोर हेयर कट्स पे दे हैव रिजॉल्व, दैट इज IBC हैज रिजॉल्व मोर, उसमें रिकवरी रेट्स बहुत लो हैं, तो ARC को कोई फायदा नहीं हो रहा है. AMC का काम रीस्ट्रक्चरिंग है इसका, कि कैसे हम इसमें वैल्यू निकाले. ARC AMC आर लिंक्ड. किस लिए मार्केट से ही तो एआरसी करवाएगा ना, सेम, बोथ आर डूइंग द सेम थिंग ओनली। ये इसका मेजर काम है रिस्ट्रक्चरिंग, इसका काम है मैनेजमेंट ऑफ द कंपनी। वो और रीफाइनेंसिंग करते हैं, एआरसी कैन डू दिस। नाउ दिस इज द होल स्ट्रक्चर विच द गवर्नमेंट हैज क्रिएटेड अंडर NARCL एंड IDRC. This is called as the asset reconstruction company which the government has created, which they are calling the bad bank. Where NARCL is the asset reconstruction company and IDRC is the asset management company. NARCL is a bad bank which will buy these bad loans from the banks. NARCL, state-owned banks will hold 51% stake, and while other financial institutions 49%. NARCL will pick bad loans. IDRC is going to manage those bad loans, is going to manage those assets, is going to turn around those assets. IDRC ka 49% is public sector banks, public financial institution, rest will be with private lenders. Iska 51% state owned banks hai, iska public is 49%. This is the difference in ownership. So NARC will buy the loans, IDRC will manage it, turn around. This is how they'll work. NARC will acquire provision stressed assets and IDRC will manage and resolve this stressed asset. Now what is the role of the government here? What is the role of the government? Backing kisko? NARCL is going to buy the bad loan from the banks at a discounted price, ये तो valuation दोनों आपस में होगा, and IDRC will manage. Final decision management का NARCL लेगा कि whether we are going to take the how much haircut and how exactly the recovery is going to happen. NARC is going to raise money from investors and instead is going to give them security receipt. Now the government is giving guarantee on this security receipt. Security receipt की value कहाँ से आ रही है? Bad loan से. For example, if the bad loan on the bank book was 5,000 crore, it was taken up by NARCL at 3,000 crore. That means security receipt की value है 3,000 crore. But अगर मेरे को recovery में I do not get 3,000 crore, but I get only, that means this is a loss on my security receipt. The security receipts, the underlying value is the bad loan. Now this is what the government is giving the गारंटी कि सिक्योरिटी रिसीट की गारंटी हमारी कि अगर रिकवरी कितनी भी हो, वी आर गोइंग टू गिव द वैल्यू ऑफ सिक्योरिटी रिसीट. द ओनली रोल ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट इन NARCL एंड IDRC, द बैक्ड बैंक, इज दैट द गवर्नमेंट इज गिविंग गारंटी टू द सिक्योरिटी रिसीट. द सिक्योरिटी रिसीट्स इशूड बाय द NARCL is being guaranteed by the government, and government guarantee भी is a value they have specified. Maximum they are going to pay 30,600 crores. They are giving guarantees to the security receipt. अगर उसकी recovery is 3,200 crore, 3,500 crore, फिर तो गारंटी की कोई नीड नहीं पड़ी. Even 3,000 crore पे भी गारंटी की नीड नहीं है. The moment recovery is less from what was promised, this security receipt loses value. So the government is giving guarantee to the security receipt. This means these security receipts will be more marketable. इनकी ट्रेड वैल्यू रहेगी, दे विल बी मोर ट्रेडेबल इन द सेकेंडरी मार्केट, एंड द मोर सेकेंडरी मार्केट ट्रेडेबिलिटी इंक्रीजेस ऑफ सिक्योरिटी रिसीट्स, दैट मीन्स मोर पीपल विल बी विलिंग टू बाय सिक्योरिटी रिसीट्स, मोर पीपल विल बी विलिंग टू गिव मनी टू NARCL. One of the problems is security receipts did not have a very good secondary market because of the low rates of recovery. Now the government guarantee is going to ensure that. So the bad bank is NARCL, IDRC. NARCL 51% ownership of public sector banks, IDRC has 49%. This is the functioning of bad bank. Asset reconstruction company, asset management company. Doesn't mean other private ARCs, AMCs would not work. वो अपने आप उनका अपना role है, they will do. In fact, the banks, what the government has said that NARCL will buy the thing from the banks. Banks को भी वो upfront सिर्फ 15% value देंगे cash में, 85% वो देंगे बैंक को security receipt. To not get them clogged with liquidity. अगर 100% cash इनको दे देंगे तो recovery का less chance है, पैसे कम हो जाएंगे. So 15% cash देंगे upfront, 85% security receipts issue करेंगे. So whenever the recovery happens, the bank will also get the 85% of the money. Is it clear? See, the whole idea is the management will work here. प्रॉब्लम पहले था कि बहुत ज़्यादा लोग पैसे नहीं दे रहे ARC को रिकवरी के लिए. Now we are trying to give certain liquidity to SR so they will have money for better recovery. वो तो बाद में चांस है ही कि नहीं हो पाएगा मैनेजमेंट, तो फिर they will go to IBC. ARC is one of the participant in IBC. They can take certain things to IBC itself. Initially I don't have money, so I'm giving you security receipts based on the asset. उस asset की value का मैं पैसे नहीं दे रहा, उसी का एक value है. जब मेरे recovery हो जाएगी, you can take the. हाँ, तो वो अगर कम है, but मेरे पास सारा पैसा बैंक को क्यों दे दूँ 3,000 करोड़? I issue certain security receipts, तो मेरे पास liquidity ज़्यादा रहेगी अगर मेरे को refinancing करनी है, जो भी चीज़ें change करनी है, तो I can have more money to buy more assets. I can merge assets, I can do a lot of things. So if I give 100% cash, my liquidity remains very less. It's better to issue a security receipt. That is marketable. All security receipts are marketable. Bank can sell the market receipts. If it has a buyer, it can sell the security receipt and get money. It is marketable. Security receipt एक ही है, उसका underlying asset क्या है? Bad loan, उसी के ऊपर आपकी value है. एक ही लोन थोड़ी, I'm taking a lot of things. 85% value I'm paying in security receipts on the bad loans I've bought. Rest money again based on security receipts I'm raising. और इसका कुछ starting क्या? Promoters are also getting money. NARCL is starting with certain amount of money. Their initial money is also very high, which they're starting with. Security receipts is to improve the liquidity situation. This is your ARC AMC structure. The NARCL and IDRC. The ARCs are under SARFAESI. Company registered under SARFAESI and regulated by RBI. Monetary policy will start tomorrow. Initial part is what is conceptual. Other document is filled with facts. Rest of the sectors, agriculture onwards, you'll see most of the facts. The only things to discuss there are the energy sector and agriculture. So the initial 3 classes we'll finish the concepts, then the facts based. Thank you. And if you are facing any doubts, this is the email address.